Chapter 1. Rejection. Note, all my dudes, here is the first ever base MHA, or My Hero Academia story on my profile, since I just started watching the fourth season on Crunchyroll, so I decided to see if I could do a story on MHA. This story is going to be a technically quirkless Izuku, though quirks defined in the anime as genetic mutation powers, so Izuku in this story will be known to be extremely smart, but not that confident due to the immense bullying of his childhood. However, such confidence will grow as time passes. Though anyway, what's more is that Izuku may seem more OOC than the actual anime. But since he chose to stay quirkless and build up his own power base, I would believe he would naturally become more confident in himself very early on. Though anyway, I have a question for y'all. Who would be good for romance to a confident, military-trained, extremely smart, technology-building quirkless Deku? I'm curious about your thoughts. Okay now, my friend Unlimited Blades is the co-author of the story and has greatly assisted in the storyline and plot. This story was made in Google Docs for grammar and spelling error, and Zerg Psycho has beta read this story, so show him some love for helping out this story. Enough of my ranting. It's time for me to start the story. Not all men were created equal. 500 years ago is when the age of quirks had appeared, when a single newborn infant had been born with an angelic glow. Though as time passed, more and more quirks started appearing that slowly changed society, that heavily caters these superpower abilities, turning the age-old hero genre into a living reality. However, as more and more people gaining quirks appeared, there will be a chance that someone wouldn't have gained to, which in today's society has been labeled quirkless. The quirkless minority is a heavily discriminated to the point that the current Japanese government sanctioned many laws to protect the quirk citizens while leaving out the quirkless. So having little to no rights in both voice and mind, many dreaded the prospect of having no quirk when they are developed at the age of 4. But even then, it was always a luck of the draw to see what quirk you'd possess. In the latest of quirk research, it was more probable to claim a quirk from either parent, slightly rarer to claim both quirks in a genetic hybrid of both, or the rare aspect to develop a completely random quirk, while the one of legend passed down from 200 years prior, capable of passing down one quirk to a successor. However, a single boy would cause the very foundation of the hero society to stand on its head, for he will solidify his resolve to build his own quirk using ancient methods, or just sell his soul to a demon. Izuku Midoriya was on his knees after actively crying in the open after being torn verbally by his former friend and school bully. Any who would see this would take pity to a quirkless teen, but that wasn't the reason why the freckled teen was crying, but it was due to the very man in front of the green quirkless schoolboy. Toshinori Yagi was a very thin and sickly-looking man with a massive scarring on his chest with near-destroyed innards. Izuku's heroic actions to save not only his school tormentor, but has done so without any regards to his own safety, to which truly symbolized a hero in the making. Young Izuku Midoriya. Let it be known that my quirk can be passed down to you, and you will become my successor to be the next symbol of Dash. The matchstick started to say only for the green-haired boy to slowly get up, wiping away his tears to say, "No, thanks, Yagin," Izuku said, looking up to see a complete disbelief. What? Toshi exclaimed, as when he expected the boy to jump in joy to receive a quirk much like he did back when he was in middle school, only to be turned down swiftly. Did that mean the hidden hero's advice did some work? I'm happy you'd think of B, but I've already taken SD steps to become a H-hero. All Might clocked his head slightly as anyone would, wondering what a quirkless kid could do to participate in the same ring as those with strong quirks. But Toshi was happy that Izuku was determined to walk the same road, so he smiled and gave a thumbs up. Excellent, young Midoriya. Best keep that mindset, because heroics can be quite a cutthroat career. But I have one question. How do you intend to play on the same playground with other heroes? The sickly man asked, only to throw up blood, which caused the freckled kid to jump in fright. Are you okay? Adorable. Just when he almost answered my question, his worry for my health outweighs his desire to answer. A real hero. Master, you'd be proud to have found someone so much like myself, Toshi thinks to himself just as he wiped away the blood from his mouth. It's fine, young Midoriya, but please answer the question. If I know, then I'll be able to do whatever I can to help. because I can see a real hero in the making. The skinny matchstick assured as he really wanted to know what Izuku had planned. The freckled teen nodded as he began to explain. Hey, All Might, how much do you know about quirks? Really know about quirks. Toshi clocked his head, curiously unsure of where that came from, but decided to indulge his future successor's questions. I know enough to make conversation. Why? Well, it's like this. Eventually, mankind is going to stop evolving at one point or another, or some villain is going to figure out a way to completely erase Quirk's dash. Izuku started to explain, to which Toshi thinks extremely specific. But the one thing that won't stop evolving is technology. Technology doesn't devolve, nor does it stop under normal circumstances. It keeps moving forward and advancing as time continues. I believe it's time for someone to use that technology and show that quirks aren't everything, Izuku said as he felt more determined to follow through with his current plans, then looked at All Might, who looked shocked, but soon grinned. Izuku believes the sickly man was grinning. Wonderful, young Midoriya. Using anything to your advantage to be a grand hero. There are exactly 5 heroes who must rely fully on support items, and the most famous is a quirkless hero in America called Batman, perhaps the only hero in the world to have no quirk to fall back on. So anything is indeed possible. All Might exclaimed, however, he stopped moments after, as he had noted his own hypocrisy, stating that Izuku needed a quirk when there was a quirkless hero in the States. Izuku looked up to the towering skeleton, and he felt a sudden surge of inspiration as he now started to feel tears fall from his face. Okay, I'm gonna head home and design the one thing that I know will make me a great hero. Thank you, All Might, Izuku said while running past the sickly skeleton, who watched Midoriya run past him. The young are always in a rush. Well, I may not have found my successor, but at least I inspired young Midoriya. Did young Midoriya leave his back? We must have been too excited. I guess I should follow H-. The secret hero felt the back empty itself from the opening, showing numerous objects, such as several pencils, pens, an eraser, a photo of Inko Midoriya, to which Toshi assumed it was Izuku's mother. Another photo of a mysterious woman almost Izuku's age. She had strawberry pink hair that looked natural along with natural white-like skin. She is wearing a very expensive school uniform that had a tan-like over jacket with a white button shirt with an elegantly designed pattern skirt with several rings on her right hand. However, Toshi saw a dark, calculating look within her, almost reminding the hero of an old foe curious. Anyway, the last thing that was dropped was a book that looked scorched and had the title of Quirk Analysis number 12 on it. So the number 1 hero bent down to grab that book to open it, exposing a random page, which caused the blonde man's eyes to widen immensely. Hero Analysis #212. Name: Yu Takayama. Hero name. Appearance: a youthful young woman with long light blonde hair, slender body with C-cup breasts, and quite a bit of toned muscles. Age: 22. Personality: seems to care about the attention of a hero a lot more than she should. Yu Takayama seems to act like more of a celebrity than a hero, and has the arrogance of one, especially since likes to take the glory from other genuine heroes. But for all of her faults, her greed, desire of fame, and her gross use of sex appeal, she seems to have the mindset of an actual hero by avoiding destruction of property, defending civilians from villain attacks, and will put herself in danger. Not sure if such is for selfish gain or selfless. Support equipment. Yu Takayama's suit seems to increase and decrease whenever uses her quirk, however, that is all she has. Support equipment enhancement. Increase the defense weave of the suit to add a bonus in protection, along with getting a malleable metal for gauntlets to add the power of a falling 18-wheeler. Quirk. Gigantification. This quirk allows the user to greatly increase the size and mass of the user to giant-like proportions. However, having seen firsthand, she seems to be unable to control what size she can use and therefore can't manipulate her body in such a way, leaving her to stick with her base form 162 meters tall or 5 feet 3 inches and her super form 20.62 meters tall. Ideas to enhance quirk. I would believe the best way to enhance this quirk is to help encourage or assist in training her gigantification so she can manipulate her size freely while not being limited to two forms. Then she can use that free manipulation for a wide variety of situations, ranging from helping a small house form collapsing or cause a fissure to prevent lava from hitting civilian homes. Or even she can use her lower size, just below full gigantification, to carry extremely heavy objects that would otherwise cause harm to civilians. Way to put this hero down. If Takayama ever went rogue and basked too much in her glory and ego and must be taken down, these steps must be taken even if not accepted. Yu is a strong hero due to her size and increased strength, which All Might alone can handle, but realistically would have business somewhere else. Firstly, confront with no less than 6 heroes with elemental manipulation, which Earth will be a must. Confront you in public, most likely gaining attention from the crowd. So this alone has the capacity to stop a potential fight, as wouldn't want to damage her rep. However, if she does proceed to ignore orders of surrender, then force her to gigantify, as this will pose an immediate threat of both the possibility of destruction of property, no less than 10 million yen worth of damages, but the real prospect of forcing civilians into the line of fire. I'd rather not include civilians, as yes, rep will plummet to the underworld if she harmed anyone outside of the heroes, plus people will get hurt from debris or by running into the line of fire. If this incident continues to exceed, then lure into very, very tight places to which she either has to destroy the buildings and cause one or several of Japan's top 10 heroes to come knocking, or must revert to her base form to fight only to be swiftly taken down. If the first option is to happen, then she will break down the tall buildings, then use the chaos of the debris to manipulate the earth and force to stop moving when she tries to break her feet or legs out from the ground, then use the opportunity to bind her hands. However, there is a chance she will break out, and depending on the power of the earth user, a top hero will have arrived at the scene. If the second option occurs, then Takayama will be swiftly detained, as she has no experience in hand-to-hand combat, as she had focused solely on her quirk. Easy to detain. However, these are only speculations, and if events occurred during the capture of then reworking of the plan is an absolute must, and the safety of the civilians must take first priority. Stats. Power: A, 5/5. Speed: C, 3/5. Technique: D, 2/5. Intelligence: D, 2/5. Coopérative: D, 2/5. Hero analysis #212. Toshinori was beyond impressed by the amount of perception put into the entries, almost as if he was naturally talented in observation. I should take this book to Nizu. Hopefully he will know what to do with this. However, I need to get this bag back to young Midoriya. All Might thinks to himself as he starts picking up the bag's contents, then starts running after Izuku. 15 minutes passed, and Toshi looked like he had a foot in the grave, as he was panting extremely hard and blood dripped from his chin as he threw up a few minutes ago, while yelling his head on how Midoriya managed to stay ahead of the strongest hero. Quirkless my ass. That boy must have a speed quirk, and no one knows. The skeleton thinks with rage, only to stop in front of a near, run-down apartment complex like it was close to collapsing if one just stared at it funny. Toshi stared at the complex and was about to move on, as his first thought was that someone so bright couldn't have lived in that dump, only to see a mop of unkempt green hair dashed in the 5th floor into a room. The sickly man just groaned as he felt that he was working more than he should for a promising hero. Okay, another thing to report. This complex doesn't seem to fit the necessary human living standard. I should probably get in contact with the lease owner. The dead man thinks more before walking towards the flights of stairs. It seems to go on forever. Toshinori Yagi. Dead at 53 and due to stairs. I can see that on my tombstone because I'm going to die climbing these. Pant, pant, pant. Toshi panted like a dog who's been in sweltering heat for hours as he climbed the final set upstairs on his hands and knees. For a man known for his strength, this was an all-time low for All Might, and was lucky no one could recognize the near-dead man in his sickly state. 15 minutes of continuous running, especially since All Might was already sick enough outside of his buff form, but now 5 flights of stairs. Toshi has already passed his time limit and hasn't been physical ever since his injury. Why did he have to be on the fifth floor? All Might shouted as his anger started bubbling as he felt this whole affair with Izuku was tedious. He slowly got up onto his feet, having remembered the apartment number 507. Clearly, though, he stopped as he saw a young woman from the photo of earlier, the one with strawberry pink hair, an expensive school uniform, and a lab coat over it. She looked over curiously at the sweating dead man, though it soon shifted into a deep-hated glare almost instantly. What the? Why does she look so familiar to All for One? The gaze is almost identical to him. Good evening, ma'am. Toshi exclaimed happily, even raising his right arm due to the left carrying Midoriya's forgotten bag. Evening, sir, she responded with a high-pitched but very beautiful voice, almost sweet like honey with a sweet smile to match. It was that shift in personality is what caused the sickly man to narrow his eyes. Again, her personality and facial movement was shockingly similar to AFO, All for One. Come now, All Might. You're supposed to be the top hero, yet you can't even figure out that your sworn enemy's daughter is right in front of you, she said as she grinned a bit too much, exposing her neatly cared for teeth. Tashinori sputtered and coughed up some blood, but unlike Midoriya, who shared concern to the skeleton's health, AFO's daughter only grinned at the sight of his crimson blood, to which added another similarity. When did he have a kid? Toshi asked curiously as he prepped to go beyond his limit at the consequence of shortening his time limit, but felt it was necessary that his arch-nemesis child was looking for revenge. AFO's daughter only shrugged as she pocketed her hands into the lab coat. I'm 15 years old, almost about to be 16. So I guess Dad had me 15 to 16 years ago. Well, whatever it is in your heroic mind, All Might. I'm not here to avenge or defend my shitty dad. I'm here to live my life how I see fit, she exclaimed as her eyes bored deep into Tashinori's shocked blue eyes, though she continued. I was expecting to start my own gang of loyal warriors to serve my every whim dash. Exactly like her father, Toshi thought suddenly, though silently felt glad that AFO's spawn didn't proceed. But I met someone who showed me that every darkness has a light hidden, and believed I was my own woman, and I have the capacity to drop far from the apple tree. She finished explaining, then turned toward 507 to where Izuku went into. The daughter turned her head to face the near-dead man. So I aim to help him with anything he desires, because that's what I believe I can do for my hero. Then returned her gaze back to the door and opened it. You coming? She called after walking through it, only to step a few steps into the apartment. What? The sickly man responded as he got over his initial shock that his arch-nemesis's daughter was branching to a separate path. The strawberry girl raised an eyebrow as her calculating cobalt blue eyes kept staring at the hidden hero. To give Izuku the book bag? Yes. Escort me to young Midoriya, All Might said as he walked through the door, only to be hit with an unknown scent that caused him to internally gag, though gave off a disgusted face. Ugh. What does that smell? Smells like moldy cheese. Toshi looks at the floor, seeing lots of debris on the carpet, almost as if it wasn't cleaned in months. Then comes numerous empty soda cans. Toshi stopped momentarily to look at the table to find a cracked photo of a beautiful woman with long green hair who was hugging Izuku Midoriya closely. The hair and eyes were identical, so she must be young Midoriya's mother. But why is the photo cracked? Toshi then continued to follow the younger AFO. For a third time, Toshi was beyond shock at what he found. The living room was beyond what any self-respecting mother would consider an appropriate living space. The kitchen was so dirty, with numerous dirty dishes littering the counters, with substances coating the counters that Toshi did not want to know what happened. The living room is incredibly dirty, with piles of trash consisting of ungodly amounts of empty soda cans, numerous empty pizza boxes along with wrappers of numerous candy bars, though the only clean thing in the living room was 3 sets of uniforms hanging on a door. Both looked like Izuku's when All Might first met him, while the second was the exact same outfit the girl was currently wearing. The TV looked regularly cleaned, which had been playing some anime of a boy in an orange jumpsuit shouting out a boyo or something. There's an American game console called PS10 on the entertainment center with 3 controllers on it. What in the living fuck is this? Why are AFO's kid and young Midoriya living in this trash heap? Where's a parent? Toshi thinks even more as he felt extremely concerned about these kids' health. Shirori. The woman who suddenly introduced herself as Shirori, which caught Tashinori off guard. Shirori Shigaraki. I feel you'd need a name to be more comfortable. Toshi nodded, glad he didn't need to continuously blurt out his sworn enemy's evil name. Young Shigaraki. What happened here? Where's an adult? This is in no way acceptable for growing children to live. Shirori nodded as she tiptoed over the trash that litters her home. As you know, my father is a piece of shit, so he wouldn't care what living situation I'm in. We have a third roommate. His name is Kotomaru Irishi Kodo-kun. Get up. We have a guest, Shirori called out, prompting another member of the apartment to shoot right up from the couch with a piece of meat lover's pizza in hand. Kotomaru Irishi was an incredibly toned and shirtless buff man, almost unrealistic to a middle schooler about to go into high school, which the hidden hero immediately thought that the muscular body was hinting at a quirk. Even with the pizza, those muscles showed no signs of deterioration. Kodo had deep brown hair, closely resembling chocolate, and his eyes were equally brown. With the addition of having no shirt to expose his bulging muscles, Kodo seems to be wearing basketball shorts. Oh hey, the pizza guy is here, a lot quicker than yesterday. So where's the pizza? You'd best not skip on my bell peppers, Kodo exclaimed as he cracked his knuckles intimidatingly. But Teijai instantly knew from the stance was that the buff man didn't truly mean it. Kodo, this isn't our usual pizza guy. This is Yagi-san. Izuku left something at school, and he was kind enough to bring it back. The multi-quirk girl exclaimed as she reached out for the bag. Toshi gave it to her, who merely dropped it towards the door with the uniforms. Oh, thank you, Kodo said with a bright grin and surged forward, hugging the pro hero with untold strength. UGK? Does this kid have some type of strength quirk? But he has the mindset that reminds me of myself when I was his age, a total teddy bear. Thanks, young Irishi. Please let me down. The skeleton exclaimed, fearing that the young man would break his back and end his career without knowing it. The teddy bear lets the pro hero down, then blinked as he felt a stickiness on his back and assumed it was the rubbed-off grease and tomato sauce from the slice Kodo had in his hand. Okay, young Shigaraki, young Irishi. What happened here? All Might said, but now, with full seriousness, as despite having known these kids for a good 15 minutes, he's starting to feel concerned for their living habits with obvious no caretaker around. Shirori looked at Kodo, who merely shrugged, as having no problem with answered, though shoved the entire pizza slice from his right hand at his mouth in a single thrust. Though it was the girl who spoke. Well, we weren't living here until 2 weeks ago, but Izuku's mother, Inko Midoriya, was reported to have been raped and murdered during a villain attack at a hospital in town. Izu was really hurting due to that, and with literally nothing done by the government. All they sent was money for their apology. She exclaimed and started ranting about how bad the hero system was to allow a villain gang to escape after committing a heinous act. Izuku needed emotional support, so I agreed to move in with Kodo-kun, since we knew each other for a few years, so it was only right to be there when he needed us. So here we are, with the government writing us 3 off as legal adults too old for foster care in an orphanage. They send us weekly allowances as if they think that is enough to cover their mistake. The strawberry girl finished her explanation with a huff, almost attempting to stomp over to the room that she and Izuku remade into a workshop, however, didn't want to look rude to the #1 pro hero. All Might was concerned, as this was a behavior of both villains and vigilantes in an attempt to either break society or try to forcibly change the hero system. While young Shigaraki, I am sorry for your situation. I truly am, but this is no way for an aspiring hero to live. So, if you'd allow me, I'm going to bring in someone who has a high intelligence quirk, and he knows what more he can do for your situation, the skeleton informed, hoping they'd take his offer. Kodo glanced at the multi-quirk girl, who merely returned the gaze. Both seemed to be speaking mentally, or perhaps they were together long enough where they can anticipate each other's thoughts. Then the girl spoke. You'll have to ask Izuku first. He's technically the head of the house, so it's only right for the head to decide. Tashinori nodded as he looked over to the 2 of 3 doors that were open, then started walking towards it, hoping his fears don't increase anymore, leaving the 2:15-year-olds alone. Kodo whispered to the AFO girl. You know, Izuku-kun seemed happier when he came home, so should I assume it was Yagi-san that helped relight that fire? She responded with, yes. I suspect Yagi-san is going to attempt to get into contact with some pretty high government official to try and recruit me and Izuku. What should we do? He asked, unsure of what to do at this point. Kodo may not be as smart as Izuku and Shirori, but he made up for the lack of high intelligence for his strength stat to be on a similar level, even mistaken to be called a strength quirk. Leave them. Best not to involve ourselves in their conversation, Shirori explained, as one of her quirks allowed her to have a distinct feeling that allows her to read situations with spiritual clarity. I have a feeling Yagi-san will be able to reignite Izuku's fire. All Might knocked on the door labeled workshop with it marked into the wooden door, hoping that the green-haired teen was within, now more determined to be the hero and help these kids in their situation. Young Midoriya, it's Tashinori Yagi. We met on the roof and asked if you could be a hero without a quirk. May I come in? I have something very important I need to say to you. Toshi remained silent for a few minutes, hoping to speak to his newly decided protege. Come in. Midoriya called from inside the room, which the pro-hero entered to see, perhaps the only room that's cleaned by daily. The room was modern with metal walls and floors equivalent to a military lab/workshop. Metal tables and counters with numerous kits and gadgets lying around on the tables, to which some looked like crude-made grenades and guns. Izuku was sitting at a metal counter on the far right wall from the door, which was located on the left corner. The quirkless teen seemed to be looking at something that was written on a sticky note, though Toshi knew that the note looked important because of how emotional that Izuku was staring at it. Then the teen looked over at the old man. You said you had something to say, Yagi-san? The old skeleton couldn't get a word out as he saw a look of determination despite how serious the situation was. Yes, I do. I'm thinking of bringing in someone with a high intelligence quirk to survey your situation and would make the most logical call, but I'd like your permission first, Toshi asked as he hoped for a yes. Izuku remained silent for a moment while staring at the skeleton's eyes looking for anything, but the truth though, for a moment the quirkless kid smiled and nodded. Sure, sounds good. Tomorrow's Saturday, so what pizza would your friend like for lunch? The intelligent student asked as he wanted to prep for guests for tomorrow. Toshi narrowed his eyes as Izuku immediately asked for dinner, but didn't comment on getting the house cleaned, which meant either Izuku was so focused on creation as the pro-hero instantly thought of when he first looked at the room that the boy wasn't even capable of cleaning up after himself, except for places to work at. Pepperoni will be fine, but young Midoriya, I just wanted to know if you're okay continuing this path. If doing so, then you must continue until you can't, Toshi asked, even knowing that Izuku Midoriya would still want to follow his dream, especially since his only family was gone. The quirkless teen looked down at the sticky note again, then extended it towards the hero. This is what I drew up when I was 7. It was something I thought of as a joke, but as I keep thinking about it, I feel it's the only way to proceed, he said, giving the skeleton a good view of the note, which looked like a suit crudely drawn by a child because it was though on the top said nano suit, and on the side was the abilities that this suit had. Super strength, 3,000 pounds minimum. Super speed, 60 to 70 miles per hour minimum. Cloaking, light refraction. Armor mode, enough to stop a .50 cal armor-piercing bullet. Toshi was highly impressed that a small kid managed to put this together, but wondering how much more can be edited and added if Izuku had done. Should I give this to Nizu? Maybe he can put together enough money to get the materials. I could fund him myself, but I'm not sure how much the technology alone will be. So, this kid may end up raping my wallet. Toshi, in the end, gave a sticky note back to Izuku, who looked at it again before a thoughtful look, then grabbing a pencil from the counter's corner, then a sheet of paper to start drawing something. It looked like a far more detailed drawing of the nano suit. I'll see how you progress tomorrow. But first, need to get back to you. All Might thanks once again. Location, UA Academy, Principal's Office Waiting Room. All Might was sitting in a waiting room within the UA Academy. for well over 20 minutes, which seemed to be understandable since UA, in the middle of the school year, even though the skeleton hero had gotten an offer to teach at the school in hopes to pass on his knowledge and try to find a potential successor, which the second part wasn't needed. Having been rejected the first time, Toshi found a second potential user closely linked to Izuku Midoriya, so the Walking Dead man was wondering how lucky he was that day to find a potential successor twice. Yagi-san, Nizu-sama is ready to see you. The receptionist, who was a young, beautiful woman with silver hair, called out to the pro hero, so he nodded at her while getting up, then entering the principal's office, showing not a human sitting at the desk, but was a creature with pure white fur and had a combination of animalistic genes of dog, bear, and rat, along with an X-shaped scar over its right eye, and held what seemed like a permanent smile. The skeleton has never seen the bear creature not wearing a smile. Toshinori Yagi-san, it's a pleasure to see you again. Did you come to accept my offer? If so, we can work quickly to integrate you just before we enter the second semester, the creature said with excitement. In his voice, however, Toshi only shook his head at the white fur creature. I've already accepted, but I am waiting for the next school year, so I can start fresh with a set of new young minds, but I'm not here for that. Nizadano, I found 3 aspiring heroes an hour ago, and one of them has the capacity of being my successor. The sickly man said, only to cough out some blood, though luckily it didn't come out like the hero was puking. Nizu raised an animal-like eyebrow at the number 1 hero's words, curious on who would even get All Might himself to say they could be heroes. So these 3 must have very powerful quirks and ideals, plus All Might originally agreed to teach the heroics class as a way to find a successor to pass on his quirk, one for all gem. Is that so? Of course, you'd find such gems hidden in rocks. If you're asking to recommend them to UA, then bring them here tomorrow, so I can interview them and they can fill out a recommendation forms, Nizu explained as he started shifting papers around his desk, most of which looked like recommendations papers from numerous pro heroes, and many with very powerful positions both socially and politically, along with quirks. Actually, Nizadano, I want you to come with me to meet these 3 personally, and specifically one of them. His name is Izuku Midoriya, and I feel you'd really relate to him intelligence-wise, All Might said, as he didn't want to explain their situation since it was their story to tell. No, his, and Nizu was the most understanding due to his history, and coupled with his massive and human intellect, the rat would be the best to examine Izuku and his housemates. Nizu stopped just as he grabbed 3 forms that said recommendation form. However, the dog creature spoke up curiously. Really? You never asked me this, so these 3 are so special that I wouldn't believe it unless I see it for myself. Is that right? The matchstick nodded at him, knowing that was his exact thought. Very well. We can visit this young Midoriya tomorrow. However, I want to know why, because while I agree that these 3 and their special quirks could certainly make them fantastic heroes, there's another reason, Nizu said as he dropped the forms from his hands, then clasped them together as he often did to symbolize his seriousness, while his face didn't change expressions. All Might only sighed loudly, knowing that the non-human would have figured out the hidden reason why he wanted those 3 in UA. Yes. Damn you and your intelligence quirk. I fear that these 3 may end up taking the law into their hands and become vigilantes. I saw what their home life is like, and young Midoriya held a distant stance of our current society. So, I fear he may become a second Stain, but unlike the first Stain who slaughtered almost 86 heroes at this point. Young Midoriya is more dangerous than the hero killer, because whole Stain is street smart. Midoriya would far outclass him instantly. Toshi explained that he feared more on what Izuku Midoriya and his natural intelligence can achieve. Niza nodded at this, having understood the base character of the one who Toshi believes is the main head of these 3 potentials. Plus, the white creature figured out what made Stain and Izuku different, but almost the same was the IQ. One was street smart and knew more about heroes, while the other was naturally gifted in intelligence. And that natural gift can swiftly overcome any gained IQ with only time. I see. Nizu could only say, along with a shiver on his fur, also coming to the same conclusion that All Might came to, and naturally believed that it was far more terrible than anything Stain can do. Okay, Toshinori-san, I'll bring Aizawa and loader for security reasons. Plus, they can give some greater insight on these three potential heroes Nizu offered, to which the skeleton nodded. Thank you. I'm grateful. Now Toshi held the means to gently push Izuku and his friends onto the path of real heroes and hoped that they wouldn't turn it vigilantism or worse, villainy. Chapter 2. Meeting. Note, alright my dudes, since the last chapter was given such great reviews and comments, I feel I should continue it as soon as possible, as much for my life. Anyway, me and Unlimited discussed what to do with this chapter, and this is what we came up with together. So do me a favor and like this story, show us you're enjoying it as much as we are. If anyone has any ideas they want implemented, then do so, because y'all are much more creative than I am. Anyway, someone contacted me concerning a few grammar errors from Chapter 1. Errors that even Google was unable to fix. It's mistakes like this that make them unnoticeable to me, because it's why I have Google Docs in the first place. So I apologize if there are mistakes that Google can't fix. This story is far from perfect, and I won't say that it is, and there will be mistakes. It's why I use Google Docs. I can't see these mistakes on my own, and I have some people reading it. So I just decided to work as much as I can to keep these mistakes low to the best of my abilities. Updated. Okay, so I figured out the problem for the previous chapter. To those outside of, I have a profile called Skykicker1010. In the last chapter, one had copy-pasted it from the docs section, but I didn't realize that docs completely deletes certain words. So I apologize for not figuring this out earlier. Okay, people, Q&A time. This is something I'm going to start doing as a way to clear up any questions in the reviews or comments. I'll pick 2 to 3 reviews in the stories and publicly respond to them. If you have any questions on the story, then please comment down. #1. Question by Brisspillow642. Gotta admit, got me hooked so far. Curious what Kodo is in reference to thought, if there is any inspiration from. Marvel or DC, I mean. A. By Skykicker10101. Thank you. I do hope you stick around. Kodo isn't a reference to anything. Due to the fact that Shirori Shigaraki was created as a younger version of All for One, though more mellowed, I would say. But anyway, my co-author thought that an OC had claimed one of the most powerful quirks to the anime. He decided to build up his own OC to claim the second powerful quirk, but more on symbolism, really. #2. Question by Kakarot Bardoxon. This Izuku would fit well with Mei Hatsum, Momo Yaoyorozu, or Melissa Shield. Mei or Melissa would make the most sense, very smart, and into support gear. Both have advantages in compatibility. Mei wants to prove science is better, and Melissa is quirkless like him. I hope you update soon, as this is a really nice start to an Iron Deca story. Also, I love the fact AFO has a daughter. I just wonder how she will do against the League of Villains. A. By Skykicker10101. Thank you for the suggestions on romance, and indeed you make very compelling points on both of them, but on Melissa's Shield, there isn't really any argument besides being builders, and no, I won't accept quirkless as a valid argument. It's what many fanfics consider a disability in the MHA universe. Yes, and here's the update you so desire, my friend. I hope you enjoy it. Me and my co-author discussed a lot for this chapter. Shirori Shigaraki is quite similar to her father, even if either choose not to admit it. But she doesn't have the hesitation like other heroes and will put down villains if need to. She wouldn't express such mercy to any villain, especially AFO's toys. Alright, that's enough for the story's first Q&A. I hope you like my answers to these reviews. Anyway, let's get to the story. Within a beaten-up, old, and dirty-looking van is driving down the street of a residential setting heading toward the apartment complex, where the Diamonds in the Rough had been living without parental supervision. Inside the beat-up van is where 6 pro heroes were within, mostly discussing with themselves the heroes All Might had discovered yesterday. But now, it was 10:35 a.m. on Saturday. In the driver's seat, the owner of the shitty van was Toshinori Yagi in his skeleton mode, wearing a slightly dirty white t-shirt with brownish cargo shorts, and was gripping the wheel hard until his bony hands were showing white. However, the other 5 occupants in his car were less than ideal, especially since most of what the other heroes were talking about was how shitty his CAR is. Toshi was having a twitching eye, especially since it was an insult to his hand-me-down car from Nanashimura. I'm just saying, Yagi-san, you'll get more respect if you just renovate the van. It looks like you're homeless, especially since you look like you have a foot in the grave. Spoken by the man who had wooden arms, except he was wearing a Naruto Shippuden black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. The wood arms guy had deep black hair and equally black eyes. He was the pro hero Kinnui Woods and recently debuted, but was praised for his keen perception. But outside of his hero outfit, Kamui was simply called Shinji Nishiya. Shinji was sitting in the back seat next to the left door. Tashinori simply ignored the comment as he consistently muttered under his breath that the young potential heroes were worth it, even if the number one hero was very close to throwing Kamui Woods into an adjacent building. A female voice, however, spoke up in defense to Toshi, so the blonde man. Leave him alone, Shinji-kun. The van was a gift from an old friend. The woman was a long black-haired woman wearing a white blouse with a blue patterned skirt. Narumi Kiyama was the R-rated pro-hero Midnight, who was often said to be an overly perverse woman outside her normal hero duties, and it certainly didn't help with her hero custom being modeled after a traditional dominatrix outfit. Shinji only huffed as he looked out the window with a slight pout, as he only wanted to help, especially since at any moment this van will undoubtedly croak. Fine, fine. I was only giving advice, Narumi-chan. I know, Shinji-kun. She responded, then pushed her glasses further up her nose since they were slowly falling off due to the consistent bumping of the van's tires. The fourth member in the van was an extremely tired-looking man with stubble-like beard and very messy black hair, though unlike the others in the back seat or the passenger. This man was in an orange sleeping bag cocoon, and he was located in the van's caboose. While Aizawa-san is lucky, he seems to sleep anywhere without a second thought, the woodman exclaimed as he peered behind the back seats, where Aizawa was softly snoring on the van's floor. The fifth member was the second shortest within the van, who sat at 5 feet 1 inch, and is the only member in the van to remain in one's pro-hero outfit, which was a shirtless man with jeans. 2 metal, like fingerless gloves over his hands, exposing the metal tips on his hands, which was connected to the short man's quirk. But what was the most about this man was that his helmet is just a repurposed industrial claw remade to look like a dragon skull. The short metal digger was Higuri Maijima, also known as the Pro Hero Power Loader, the first hero to be known about for hero support items rather than the use of a quirk, especially since Loader's quirk is less than applicable in heroic situations. So the little man built a Loader exosuit to use that certainly kept Higuri in the game of heroes for so long. Higuri remained silent as he was watching the passing scenery through his metal helmet, as he kept thinking about his meeting with All Might an hour earlier, which had Loader constantly thinking of a new mechanical genius. So he felt responsible to help guide and mold this engineering prodigy. Hey Higuri-san, why are you so silent? Midnight called out to the short man who was sitting beside her in the back seat. Loader lazily turned his head toward the black-haired woman and said, just thinking about what Yagi-san told me earlier. Yagi-san, you said this kid is truly quirkless? The helmeted hero called out towards the skeleton, who twitched at the notion of quirklessness. Yes, young Midoriya said so himself. He was quirkless, and yet he still aimed to be a hero no matter what I thought or anyone else thinks. Tashinori informed everyone the circumstances of Izuku Midoriya with light information on the other 3, especially since it's only been a full day since the matchsticks interaction. Higuri huffed, slightly turning to face the window again. Odd, really. In today's society, many praise quirks, and those with extremely powerful and flashy quirks are held on a pedestal, but this one kid runs the risk of being discriminated far more as a hero, Loader said, as he had seen the very discrimination that the quirkless was often subjugated, but even then Loader held no position to change anything. Toshi gripped the wheel, even more luckily having deep control over his gifted quirk, but no matter how much the top hero kept saying to himself, the known discrimination to the quirkless was very real, even if many quirk-filled heroes choose to ignore it. Yes, I agree, but so long as I'm supporting him through this. Then even that won't get him down, Toshi said as he slowly let up his grip on the wheel, then smiled as Izuku's smile clear as day on the hero's mind. Loda remained silent as his concerns over the boy's hero career, but the short man made his concerns clear to Toshi. Okay, what about these other two? One you said was your potential successor. The light brown-haired shorty said as he attempted to push this conversation forward to keep the uncomfortable silence away. Toshi thinks as he tries to remember, though that didn't take long since the brown-haired kid was very memorable. The chocolate brown hair and eyes that seemed to radiate warmth and happiness, but the boy was much taller than most middle schoolers, 6 feet 2 inches, and has bulging muscles, which obviously led Toshi to believe that Kotomaru have a strength quirk, plus the giant was a hugger. My hopeful successor is, let's say, eccentric. He's quite cheerful and energetic as well as fiercely loyal to young Midoriya and young Shigaraki. I feel as if I have nothing to worry about them safety-wise. He has bulging muscles far beyond any middle schooler that I've seen, so it's natural to assume he has a strength quirk. All Might informed Kotomaru with the rest of the heroes, some like Kimui and Loader nodding to themselves, as that type of personality and a matching quirk would be a great person to pass on one for all. Though the final person in the van, and not human, was a white-furred creature with a scar over its right eye and was located in the front passenger seat. Nizu remained silent throughout the trip toward the apartment complexes, but now the animal finally spoke up. What about this final diamond? You get to inform anyone about her. Is it because she reminds you of someone like All for One? Nizu said with a cheery tone, but knew that the subject of All Might's old nemesis was an often sore spot. The skeleton sighed, but nodded at the insinuation. Yes, she's All for One's daughter. With that said, caused Shinji and Narumi to flinch heavily as they heard stories of just how frightening that this mysterious multi-quirk bearer is and how powerful his quirk truly was. Should we bring her in? From what you've told us, this girl will be too dangerous to just walk around without a leash, the glasses woman recommended, as she believed that having another All for One running around unchecked will bring forth untold chaos to the current hero society. No Midnight. Young Shigaraki is attempting to be a hero with young Irishi and young Midoriya. So we won't make any aggressive actions towards them, otherwise we will push them to vigilantism. It will be for the best if we push them just enough to continue on their path to become heroes. Toshi informed what would potentially happen, especially with the numerous anti-vigilantism laws in place. Narumi nodded as many with aspirations of heroism who weren't given the chance to become heroes will try to take the law into their hands. Right. You have a better eye at spotting talent than anyone else could, she said while the silence returned with a vengeance. For another 20 minutes, in the uncomfortable silence, the view of the apartment is shown. Okay, here we are. Please be sensitive to their living situation. All Might informed as the van slowly entered the outdoor parking spot of the apartment. Toshi was the first to exit the car to look around, where no one was around aside from the 5 extremely massive trash bags on the corner for Tuesday pickups. Nizu was the next to exit out of the car, though his eyes landed on the trash bags. Well, it seems young Midoriya and his housemates have been cleaning house, the scarred animal commented, which caught the top hero's ear. What do you mean, Nizudano? Nizu turned and looked up to stare at the skeleton, and almost flashed an uncharacteristic frown, but did not do so. Yagi-san, you said we would be coming today to them, yes? Then it would show that they're good hosts by cleaning up the house. Toshi blinked a couple times, then nodded, agreeing with the small creatures. Right, of course, Nizudano. It was extremely dirty when I came here yesterday, though that is expected for growing children. While Nizu and All Might were discussing the matter, Shinji came out of the car to look around the surroundings as he usually did when approaching a location the wood quirk hero never been to, especially the poorer part of town. As a hero, Kimui was paid a lot more than the average worker. Narumi got out of the car just after Shinji, then walked towards the back of the van to open its Shotokan. Wake up! We are here, she called out to the orange cocoon. The sleeping bag shifted a bit, then lifted, then upper half, exposing a very tired-looking man with stubble on the lower jaw. How did we get here so fast? It's not enough for a proper nap. The cocoon man commented in a tired tone. Midnight only rolled her eyes at Shota. Yeah, but this is important. More important than your napping, Shotokan. We are about to meet 3 very promising heroes. And why am I here? The tired man asked as he wiggled out from the back of the van, then exited out from the sleeping bag. The tired man Shota is a pale-skinned man with stubble on his jaw and long, very shaggy like black hair. It was the look of a man who operated in the night. The hobo man was wearing a long-sleeved black shirt, equally colored black pants tucked into black boots. The only unique color diversity that the nocturnal hero had was the gray bandage-like scarf wrapped around the hero's neck. "We are security," the slumber quirk user informed the hobo sleeper, who merely raised an eyebrow at her. "For what? Don't tell me that the top hero in the whole world is scared of a bunch of kids," Shota said with a disbelief tone in his voice, unsure why four heroes with very different quirks for a multitude of scenarios were present when All Might can take down almost any villain there was. Narumi only shrugged, as she wasn't told the actual reason why they were there, only that they were security for Toshi and Nizu's safety. "I don't know. It's what they told me, though. If you want to know the actual reason, then ask Nizu, but don't expect to get a straight answer," the sleeper woman answered before walking towards Shinji to tap on his shoulder to catch his attention. Then the two walked towards All Might and the intelligent rat creature. Shota stepped forward a few times only to stop when the right back door opened for Power Loader to jump out, while closing the door behind the helmeted hero. "I heard, though I was told that I would be visiting a potential engineering genius." The short hero explained why he was coming. Shota, however, only rubbed the back of his neck, grunting slightly. All Might walks towards the stairs with the four heroes and Academy principal following behind the skinny man. However, they stopped in place where the half-naked muscular man was walking down. He had brown hair and eyes, wearing blue jeans, and was carrying a large black trash bag, twice the size and possibly 3 times heavier on the man's shoulder. Kotomo Irishi was the muscular middle schooler and close personal friend to Izuku Midoriya, and would place himself in harm's way to save others like any true hero would. Kodo stepped down onto the ground, while Toshi flinched slightly as he mentally prepped for the big teddy bear to give an equally bear-like hug, only for the tall teen to walk past the heroes with no facial movement, as to show that the buff kid didn't recognize them. Kodo placed the trash bag with the other identical black bags, then turned around to start walking past the heroes once more. Toshi was about to regret what he will do, but he needed the muscle man to recognize them. Good morning, young Irishi." The sickly skeleton called out to Kodo, who turned his head to look for the voice. The young man's eyes lit with stars when he recognized the one who had come to the apartment yesterday. Sam, with Toshi's name called out with a chilling shiver accompanying it. The pro hero didn't have a reaction speed to dodge the incoming bear that grabbed the skinny matchstick and pulled into a near-crushing hug. "Ah, you came back," Kodo exclaimed happily as he brought the skeleton closer into an even stronger hug. Toshi looked paler than before as he felt his very bones start to break underneath the pressure. "Aizawa, help," All Might said with a pained look on his face. Shota Aizawa sighed to himself, then glared as his eyes emitted a deep crimson glow, indicating that the man's ocular quirk, which was called Erasure, the red-crimson quirk that negated the quirks of others. While Erasure can negate a large number of quirks, the only few downsides that existed is that Aizawa can only focus on one person at a time. The eyes must remain open to keep the line of sight, which also causes dry eye in the process. And lastly, Aizawa can negate certain mutation quirks, and strength usually tends to be the mutated quirk that can be negated. A few seconds had passed, to which Aizawa began to look in horror as the giant muscular boy continued to crush the dry-eyed hero's co-worker's spinal cord. "What? How is this kid still crushing Yagi? His enhanced strength should have been negated," the underground hero exclaimed, only to have his left eye twitch when he saw Toshi grinning slightly, as if the hero came up with an idea. "Hey, young Irishi, I know someone who would absolutely love to receive your hugs," Toshi said, only to cough a bit as the muscular student eased up on his strength. "Why do I feel like I'm going to get really pissed in a few minutes?" Aizawa said as his left eye had twitched for a while and a chill went down his spine. All Might managed to get a breath in and grinned slightly more, which meant he caught the big teddy's attention, then said, "Ah yes, he's the one who's never received a hug, ever, so you'll be giving him his very first hug. His name is Shota Aizawa, and he's the guy with the scarf. Right behind you, Kodo lets All Might go, who coughed a bit more while stepping slightly backward from the harsh landing. The muscular kid turned his head around to stare deeply at the hobo, while a grin slowly spreads, as well as showing way more teeth than one would intend. Aizawa gulped as he heard his senses scream at him to run from this 6 feet, 0 inches beefy kid who could crush the Erasure hero. Wait. Let's talk about this, Aizawa said as he stepped back several times while dread filled the man as Kodo turned to walk towards him with a predator-like grin clear on his face. Nope, you never had a hug, which means I must give you your first. It's unavoidable, Kodo exclaimed as he surged forward with speeds that many would flinch. The young student grabbed the very unwilling broody teacher, then started crushing the underground hero. Ugh, hi. Damn you, Toshinori Yagi. Ugh. Aizawa started groaning from the unwanted affection before glaring at Midnight, who had a smartphone in hand with flashes coming from it, indicating that the sleep-inducing hero was taking pictures of Shota and Kodo. Don't you dare. Aizawa huffed out as the muscular boy's hug was growing in strength, but that alone couldn't add any more fire to Shota's rage, especially when his husband will no doubt get that photo. Oh, come on, Shota-kun. Just think about how excited Hisashi-kun will be when he sees his husband getting a hug for the first time ever, Narumi said as more flashes occurred from the phone, which illustrates her point. Eraserhead didn't want to add any more fuel to that fire when he almost blurted out by mistake that Shota does in fact get hugs from the tired hero's husband. Now, Kun, please put Izuku down. Nizu spoke for the first time, seeing the muscular student, and began to think. The first thing that came to the rodent's mind was the boy's quirk, which immediately assumed a physical enhancement quirk if the strength and speed was anything to go by, but to see the distressed look from Aizawa, who used Erasure to help All Might to not get crushed, told a separate story. Kodo groaned unhappily, but lets Aizawa go anyway, to which the dry-eyed hero grunted, stepping backwards due to the sudden release, while making a mental note to seriously get back at All Might, as well as Nizu, since the rodent could have asked the teddy bear to let go sooner, though chose not to. Okay, now that I have my breathing stable. This kid, he couldn't possibly be quirkless, especially in this day and age. Especially since he's in the generation that is slowly purging the quirkless gene. So either this kid has a quirk that I can't negate, or he truly is quirkless, but trained himself to be that strong, Aizawa thought to himself, which was a very intriguing question of a quirkless kid with strength closely on par with strength quirks, which many would dismiss the fact that a quirkless nobody could achieve the strength closely on par with physical enhancement quirks. Aizawa watched as Kodo brought Narumi into a hug, who eagerly hugged back with a big smile of such a kind gesture. Showed aside as he walked towards Nizu, who watched the scene with a slightly bigger smile. So, Aizawa-kun, are we on the same page that Kun is quirkless? The rat creature asked the tired hero while taking his eyes off the scene, just as the hugger let go of the woman to instantly the shorty, who tried to run away, but only got a step in before being grabbed. Yes, that was the conclusion I came to as well. I just find it perplexing that this kid is quirkless with his muscular appearance, so I naturally thought he had some strength quirk. Aizawa answered the furball, to which Niza nodded at the assumption. I had also came to assume that as well, but without a quirk, then Toshinori-san is working with a clean slate, which I'm not sure which is more difficult. So shall we inform Toshinori? Aizawa only shook his head, as he believed this was something that only Kotomaru should inform him or them if the time came. Toshinori preferred not to intervene in other people's conversations. However, that didn't stop the number one hero to have extremely keen hearing to pick up conversation around him. It was one of many skills he had developed in his time in America. Young Irishie is quirkless, huh? Maybe when we have a moment alone, I'll inform him of one for all and see if he will accept it. If he chooses not to, like young Midoriya, then I'll do what I can to help them achieve their goals. Okay, young Irishie, as much as I love the hugs, we unfortunately do not have much time. Would you care to take us up to the apartment so we may discuss your future? All Might called out after bringing himself out of his thoughts. Watching the muscular kid drop Higuri, who landed on his knees groaning in pain, "My back," he exclaimed, using his left hand to grip the lower portion of his back. Kodo smiled, then nodded as he began to walk toward the stairs, but stopped suddenly just as he got in front of the first step. Young Irishie? Is something the matter? All Might asked as he was unsure why Kodo stopped. Shinji felt his spine chilled in that moment, but luckily it passed, as he knew what was about to happen that Narumi hilariously called the Irishie charging hug was about to happen again, and the only two that didn't have hugs were the wooden-armed hero and the rodent. Kodo turned around as he looked down at Nizu, to which the creature's smile became a shocked look as his instincts were yelling to run from what is essentially an Ushuri brown bear, one of the largest bears in Russia. One more thing, You didn't get any hugs yet, Kodo said, which sounded way more menacing than it really was. However, Nizu had a weaker skeletal structure than humans and was more fearful for his own life. That is not necessary. But we shouldn't be keeping your friends waiting. Since they too will be spoken to about their futures, Nizu tried to reason out from the hug, only to eep when mighty hands grabbed the rodent and squished by Kodo's arms. The white-furred rat was expecting his bones to crack, only to feel the hug was gentle and soft, as if the kid knew that the principal couldn't walk away from a full-strength hug. The muscular man puts Nizu down gently, then starts walking up the stairs without saying a word. The heroes follow behind, while muttering was heard between them. How was the hug, Nizu? Narumi asked, as the rodent didn't look to be in pain from getting one. He responded in a lowered voice to match the muttering, gentle and soft, like he knew that I would break if I got one at full force. So, the kid is observant. Shinji got a word in after the hugging fiasco, but was more observing the kid himself. Shinji was like that as a way to continuously adapt to the sudden situations. That much is obvious. I'm more concerned about his speed. Didn't we think his quirk was strength? Or was it physical enhancement? Midnight said as she was curious about the young man, based on the Commission of Quirk Safety and their official quirk specifications. Physical enhancement is a quirk type listed underneath the mutation list. Izawa responded to Midnight's question, but he didn't want to explain the kid was actually quirkless, since that is something Kodo would want to explain himself. What the heroes didn't know was that while Kotomaru preferred not to involve himself in conversations that didn't belong to him, he felt he should be open. You're wondering what my quirk is, yes? He asked as he stepped into the fifth floor, to which one answered, but was curious. I'm quirkless, and like that, the bomb had been dropped. All but three were looking shocked at such a revelation, but couldn't voice anything, just as the brown-haired kid turned around with an incredibly serious look. The first moment they saw Kodo looking this serious, since meeting them, especially for All Might who knew him much longer. And before you comment that I'm lying about my disability, the one thing I hate more than Katsuki Bakugo, and it's lying. It only serves to bring more harm than one would intend. He said, though he glared at All Might, to which Toshi flinched at that while thinking, what did I do? The muscular student only turned again, walking towards his apartment door with the other heroes following close behind, as Izuku-kun had told me. Quirks aren't everything. The moment you lose your one biological tool, you're finished. Izawa remained tight-lipped, but felt something from that sentence, almost like this Izuku kid was more observant to the quirk-obsessed society, more so than other heroes who had been pros for years. I have a question, Loader said as he finally spoke up to the kid personally, which Kodo nodded. Go ahead, did you get cybernetic enhancements? Loader asked his incredibly stupid question, since cybernetics was nearly forgotten when quirks started to appear in 80% of the population, but before the age of quirks. Cybernetics was used to physically enhance those who undertook surgery, but wasn't yelled at for his stupidity. No, sir, 100% all me. Straight from the foundation to the roof. The kid responded and chose to remain quiet as he reached the door. Upon opening it, or more like kicking it open, Kodo ducked with a bolt of lightning that was shot at him from the entrance. God damn it, Kotomaru Irishie. If you don't stop breaking down our front door, I'll take off your fucking legs for good. You hear? Someone shouted from inside the apartment. However, the kid, ducking underneath a bolt of lightning, which was 1/3 speed of light, meant Kodo had exceptional reaction speed. Yes, I know, Shiori-chan, Kodo said, returning to his full height, then entering the apartment with the heroes following close behind. The apartment looked far cleaner than what All Might had seen since yesterday. No pizza boxes littering the floor, as well as no more soda cans. Oh my, I haven't seen something this clean since Hisashi-kun's parents came to town, Narumi said as they reached towards the living room, though the tired hero only groaned at the comparison. Please don't bring up that time of trauma. Hisashi-kun was an evolved type of insufferable during that period. I almost felt like driving a hammer in the back of his skull. Come on, Aizawa-sen, you wouldn't do that to Hisashi. Shinji said, knowing that Shota had too much love for the man's husband. Shota merely shrugged at the wooden hero. Okay, just sit down on the couch, and me and Shiori-chan will bring out something for you, Kodo said as he motioned towards the one large couch and the one smaller couch in a backwards L shape facing away from the entry hall, then walked towards the kitchen, leaving the heroes to walk to the couch and sit down. Okay, so let's review about Kotomo Irashi, Nizu said, climbing onto the left side of the small couch that turned his head to face his employees. Higuri sat on the larger couch to the right end. Well, he has impressive reaction timing for a quirkless kid, capable of dodging a lightning bolt with little notice and has greater speed and strength than average. The helmeted hero summarized the kid's ability. He's a big hugger and seen to have a kind heart. From what Toshinori-san had said to us earlier, he's loyal to his friends and would do whatever it takes to help those in need. So he's a hero at his core, Narumi added as she walked towards the big couch to sit next to Higuri, while holding a serious look when she described the teddy bear that she had met. All Might remained silent for the time, while he walked to sit down on the floor between the two couches. However, he felt resolved to offer his quirk, especially since the perfect successor was revealed. But if the top hero just ignored that bit of information and outright agreed that the brown-haired kid would be a hero, then that would be met with some concerns and resistance. So he too will express concerns about quirkless heroes, then offer a solution to not only help Kodo and his two friends to become heroes, but also pass on one for all. Even if All Might would be seen as a hypocrite, especially since he knew Batman professionally and being quirkless himself. Aitsavakun, what do you think? The rodent asked the tied hero who sat on the small couch, but was deep in thought, primarily conflicting himself on what to do. Kodo was obviously physical, capable to defend himself and fight against others. But the kid only had strength, speed, and his bulky body, but no technique, just a brutish street fighting style. Perfect for undisciplined fighters, but villains are a completely different breed. It's illogical if we just let him try out for U.A's entrance exam at his current state, especially since we use fucking robots for the practical portion. Nizu, you seriously need to remake the exams because that portion is only suited for those who can fight against them, not against those who don't have combat quirks or training. But anyway, it'd be stupid of me to say that a quirkless couldn't at least have the chance to try. Batman in America managed to be a hero with only support gear to his name. I got in, and I couldn't use my core for the exam, so I was no different than Aizawa exclaimed his thought on the whole matter as he saw the others nodding at his logic. Then he continued, so, with training, Kodo could acquire the skills he needs to compete with his peers. I agree. There are heroes with impractical quirks that have passed the entrance exam, so we shouldn't judge what we haven't seen yet. What about you, All Might? What are your thoughts on him? Shinji asked as he chose to remain standing behind the large couch, then looked over to the human skeleton. Toshinori merely sighed as he was forced to give his opinion. Well, in our line of work, it will become extremely dangerous, even with a quirk. 65% of all heroes nationwide end up dying 2 years after graduation. UA is the only school to produce heroes who happens to survive twice as long as the typical graduate, which is why it's been consistently rated as the #1 school in the entirety of Japan. So I'm more concerned about sending a quirkless kid to die, trying to achieve his dream. That's something I'd prefer not to have on my conscience. Toshi gave out a very logical answer concerning the recent hero logistics for the past several years. But, like Aizawa-san had said a moment ago, young Irashi is rough around the edges, so with the proper training, then he could even match pro heroes. I'll take it upon myself to give the boy that training, Toshi said as his body mass increased, rapidly showing All Might in his buff form. Why you? Kamui said in disbelief to the top hero. Indeed, it is my duty as the #1 hero to guide the next generation. All Might shouted with determination, only to feel a shiver on his back, causing the bulky hero to turn around to see two deep glares. Yagi-san, keep shouting, and you'll cause our already angry landlord to come here and raise our rent. I can't keep asking Dad for more cash, a feminine voice spoke, causing all heroes to turn towards the kitchen. So that must be Shuri Shigaraki, Nizu thinks as he looked up and down at the young girl. Her outfit consisted of dark gray sweatpants and a basic equal gray t-shirt. Her body was lean, but muscular. The girl's bust was much more developed, the girls her age being C-cups already. Her strawberry pink hair was tied up into a ponytail as a way to keep her hair out of her eyes since they've been cleaning since they woke up very early. Tashinori deflated back into his sickly skeleton form with a slight bloody cough when doing so, but the landlord comment didn't escape his ears. What's this about the landlord? Nothing you should be concerned about, San. Anyway, pleasure to meet you all. I am Shioyi Shigaraki, and I believe you've been told about me and who my father is. Shirori introduced herself with a practiced but cute smile that seemed to cause the men to blush. Indeed we have been. We only wish to ask several questions, then we can move towards your future and living situation, Nizu said, then explained the reason why they were there. Kodo walked over to the coffee table to set down 3 boxes of pizza and a 12-pack of Pepsi. Here's some food and soda for you, Kodo said, then walked back to the multi-core girl's side. Before we continue, where's young Midoriya? This meeting can't proceed without him, Toshi said, which made sense due to the final gem being nowhere in sight. The strawberry girl sighed as she rubbed her right temple with her right hand. Izuku thought it would be a good idea to leave just when this important meeting was about to start. He went to Takoba Municipal Beach to test one of his fucking inventions. She informed them about Izuku's whereabouts, but having used such language meant she was deeply irritated. This caught Loader's attention as he was seen grabbing a pepperoni slice, but stopped mid-action. Oh? What was he testing? He turned his helmeted head to face the young girl, who stroked her chin slightly, as to think, I believe Izuku said that he would be testing an exosuit. I completely tuned out what Izuku would be doing since we were cleaning, she answered honestly, though still pissed even now at the greenette. An exos suit, Loader exclaimed in complete disbelief, as his own Loader suit was one of the few exosuits used in the world, especially since quirks is now developed in 80% of the Earth population. Even then, to construct a power suit was incredibly difficult to do, and one needed extensive knowledge in engineering to try and build one. Shirori only shrugged as if she didn't particularly know what Izuku was doing at the beach, nor did she care. I don't know. I'm pretty mad at him for bailing on us, she said like it was a common occurrence between them. Aizawa only sighed as he got up, then spoke out. Okay, this Izuku is not here, but Shigaraki can relay what we say here, so we can move this meeting along, otherwise I'm going back to sleep. Yes. Quite right now. We'd like to ask a few questions to you. Chan, first question, are you still in contact with your father? And if so, what is the nature of the contact? Nizu agreed, then asked the first question. Shirori tapped her chin, thinking as the last time she called her father was when she asked for money to pay off Izuku's monthly rent. He may be an asshole every so often, but he still was more approachable than the toys he kept playing with. Plus, he had an annoying tendency to embarrass her 2 weeks ago when I asked Dad to send us rent money. Other than that, I had a few calls from him just checking up on me. Nothing related to heroes or villains. All Might let out what seemed like a relieved breath of air, almost like he was worried that Shirori had told her father about him, but was glad she didn't inform his arch-nemesis about yesterday. That's good, young Shigaraki. Now Nizu's second question is, how many quirks do you have, and what are they? Toshi asked as if they could figure out what abilities she'd have under her belt. Then if the girl did end up becoming a villain, then they know what to do to combat her. 12, but how about a compromise? Yes. Because I'm a girl who prefers to keep the cards close to her chest. I'll give you information on 3 of my quirks, Shirori said, and offered with a slight smirk plastered on her face. Kodo commented, which isn't hard, and snickered only to be elbowed into his ribs. Oof. He shouted in pain from the multi-quirk girl's elbow strike. Nizu and All Might looked into each other's eyes, knowing that Shirori was more similar to All for One than she'd care to admit, so this is perhaps the best deal they could reach. Very well. Chan, that is perhaps the best we could hope for. Shirori nodded at the logic and hoped for this outcome, though the girl narrowed her eyes as she mentally sifted through her basket of quirks to figure out what ones she'd prefer to give out while leaving her more powerful ones out of the light. All right, then. Getting something to write these down because I refuse to repeat myself, she exclaimed, watching Shota Aizawa take out a notepad with a pencil ready to write. Okay, my first quirk, as you watched earlier, is called Lightning Bolt. I can shoot bolts of lightning from my index finger, and I can mentally determine the power of each bolt, going all the way from a dangerous chain effect to a mere carpet zap. But I can't do too many in a short period, then I lose my sense of touch from the right arm for a time. Shirori explained what her first quirk does. Shota was writing swiftly through the knot, but his eyebrows furrowed, as that was a powerful offensive lightning quirk, and to describe it like that meant she used it for combat before, however, with literally no evidence to support that claim. The nocturnal hero chose to not bring it up. Incredible quirk, dangerous to machinery and armored opponents. Even with this quirk alone, you have the capacity to be a strong hero. But before you continue, have you ever fought before? He asked her curiously, which is a clever way of saying if the girl had ever hunted villains before. Power Loader was munching on the pizza with a can of soda in his other hand, but stopped and flinched slightly at this young girl who was a vigilante at such a young age and was an aspiring hero. Shinji, who was sipping on some soda, nearly choked on the brown liquid when Shota said that, though looked at her curiously, though with a hint of nervousness. Narumi, who was the only one besides Shota to not reach for any of the snacks provided by the apartment hosts, but she flinched as well and almost lost control over her quirk and let out a whiff of her sleeper quirk, but managed to keep a lid on it. My goodness, I hoped she hadn't tried to take the law into her hands. She's too young to worry about that. Niza noticed that All Might flinched heavier than the rest, as he knew personally of the consequences of vigilantism or villainy from a multi-use quirk. Do not be afraid, Yagi-san. So long as we are helping mold into a proper hero, then you don't have to worry, the rat whispered to the strongest hero, but that alone doesn't alleviate the man's concerns. Instead, it only increased it. Shirori merely shrugged at the answer. The only fights I've been to are in self-defense. Kodo can testify to that, she answered, which the buff kid, giving a thumbs up on his testimony. Collected relieved sighs were heard. The dry-eyed man nodded, then said, "Right. Thank you for your honesty. Now, what are the two other quirks?" Teleportation. I can create portals connecting to my current location to another location that I've been to, and I use this as a primary means if travel for very large distances otherwise. It's just a drain of stamina, she informed her transportation quirk, to which caused them to think more. But the fact that her teleportation takes away some of her energy meant that it had a limit, so the way she explained that she only used for travel meant it was no good during active combat. And lastly, the final quirk that I will reveal as a sign of good faith, Shirori exclaimed with a slight grin, meaning that she answered their question of her abilities as a way to trust her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered to partially reveal her winning hand, but that little detail was very loud and clear, and they can't really force her to answer anything else. They know that. Shirori knew that. The Commission of Quirk Safety knew that since Shirori only registered her true quirk rather than all 12 of them. It's called bone manipulation. This allows me to pull out my very own skeletal parts and wield them like weapons. Due to this, I can pull out and put back bones for later use. It's a mutation quirk, as it strengthened my skeleton to be harder than tempered steel. So far, the only bones fashioned into weapons are a bone like sword, bone like dagger, and capable of using my very spine as a whip. Shirori finished explaining her final requested quirk as she raised her palm, to which the skin breaks while a bone in getting pushed out. The sight of the bone being forced out of her palm was sickening, to which Power Loader tossed the pizza crust back to the table while holding his stomach. Oh, good lord, that's sickening, ugh. I feel like I'm gonna lose my lunch now. Narumi covered her mouth, almost feeling like vomiting whatever she had for breakfast. If any villain saw that, then they would try to flee or submit. Shinji was the only one to look away from the disgusting scene of a bone being forced out of the body. Kamui, sometimes during rescue operations, had sometimes seen civilians with broken bones that penetrated through the skin, but nothing like this. All Might, Nizu and Shoto were the only ones to look unaffected due to their long hero careers. Nizu for its common, since he tends to investigate his overzealous students. All Might is widely known to break many bones to that point of it penetrating the skin. Eraserhead is also known to see that though it's more common when fighting against thugs and villains at 2 a.m. Shirori grabbed the bone-like handle and forced it out while having a pained look, even closing her right eye from the pain. She then held up the bone weapon, revealing its sword edge equivalent to a dagger. This is my bone dagger. Whenever I pull out a bone, my senses don't shut off, so I feel the pain similar to having a pipe being shoved through me. That's what she said, OW. Kodo interrupted only to be slammed in the ribs by the bottom end of the bone dagger. Shuri huffed, then continued. As I was saying, it hurts, but it adds a layer of combat means, and no one expects me to pull out a bone weapon during combat. However, I don't typically fall on this because I don't have a high pain tolerance. Almost passed out, just pulling out my spine, she exclaimed, then stabbed her left palm with the dagger, just to show the dagger slowly returning into the palm. Higuri, who finally had his appetite returned, tried to slowly eat another slice because he forgot to eat lunch. His face turned green and tossed the half-eaten slice into the trash bin located next to the coffee table. I think I'm done eating for a while. Same, Shinji agreed as he too tossed the pizza and can of drink into the can. Aizawa silently gagged as he never saw a quirk that made someone weaponize their own skeletal structure, but it's due to that little fact that makes such a quirk very dangerous and surprising. I see. Thank you. Now the last question for you. If you were to pursue your desire of being a hero, then what field would you intend to follow? He asked, as this was an incredibly serious question, as there are 3 known paths a hero can take. Limelight heroes. Heroes who fully dedicate themselves to fighting or assist the public in broad daylight and get the most attention. Rescue heroes. Though rescue and limelight heroes are typically hard to distinguish when grouped together, these particular heroes are mostly dedicated to rescue operations and are usually no good in combat situations. Lastly, underground heroes. These heroes operate closely out from most rules established to the limelight and remain mostly out of the media. Some underground heroes may in fact inflict death if necessary. Probably underground hero. I can operate mostly myself, and I won't have to explain my actions. Plus, I really hate following certain rules that limits my capabilities, Shirori said with a shrug, as that was probably the best choice for her hero career. The tired hero nodded as he written down a reason, then turned towards Kodo, who remained fairly silent outside of a few quips that resulted in elbow strikes to the boy's ribs. What about Koen? Surely you know what path you want to take, Nizu said, as he was curious about All Might's potential successor's thoughts of his future. Kodo thinks for a moment as he learned there were 3 known paths to heroes, each having their own pros, cons, and public issues, but he didn't really care for such things because heroes were meant to be a sort of public servants, to defend and help those who can't. Limelight hero is about as good as I could get, the muscular boy answered the white-furred rodent. All right, this has been a productive day. We got to see and meet 2 very bright gems, but we will be in Kanta Dash. Nizu started to say as he got off the couch, only to be interrupted by All Might. Wait, we still have one boy we have yet to discuss. Since he is not here, young Shigaraki, can you answer on his behalf? Shirori nodded while not even taking the time to think, which showed that Izuku Midoriya fully trusts his housemates. Very well. What is Izuku Midoriya's quirk? Eraserhead asked as he flipped to a new note to put down Midoriya's information, but the pencil nearly snapped when Kodo responded. He's quirkless, but he's the smartest guy you'd ever meet. Aizawa gave off a shaky breath that another quirkless was trying to be a hero, but unlike Kotomaru, who has the body and power to survive the field, this Izuku is said to have greater intelligence. Why do I get the feeling that if we meet any more quirkless, they're going to have a natural enhancement for the lack of a quirk? Kimui Woods commented, with only Higuri snickering slightly. Midnight giggled slightly, as she too thought that a naturally enhanced quirkless was a common theme. Anyway, All Might, are you sure Midoriya can keep up? Unlike who has the natural physique to be on par with his peers, Izuku Midoriya, however, isn't that strong, but highly intelligent, so don't you think this will be extremely dangerous for the kid? Eraserhead asked the top hero, who merely thinks to himself about the situation. All Might already knew of Izuku's quirkless situation, but the kid's breathtaking intelligence would more than make up for his lack of a biological tool. I would be lying if I said no, as I said before. The hero's career is already extremely dangerous, especially when I decided to take young Irishi under my wing, but I had met young Midoriya personally, and I completely believe if we just believe in him, he can create something that can surpass even pro heroes. Nizu seemed to smile at this. You must have the utmost confidence on this, Izuku Midoriya. Yes, I do. The skeleton agreed, almost like a gut feeling he sometimes had. Even Nana had told the eighth bearer that she had a gut feeling about him too. Meanwhile, location, Takoba Municipal Beach. Takoba Municipal Beach was once a very popular tourist spot for the city of Mizudafu. However, the past 15 years had not been kind to the beach spot, as it's been literally turned into a public trash heap. But due to it being a public spot, meant no one could be charged for trespassing or taking what no one wanted. A large white fridge is seen being thrown into the air and harshly landing on the loose sand, but broke apart due to its already fallen integrity. Whoa. That was awesome. A loud feminine voice called out, which a beautiful pink-haired woman ran towards the broken fridge. Her outfit consisted of a worker's deep green pants, steel-toed boots, a black tank top, and a steampunk-style goggles on her forehead, though her eyes were uncovered, exposing a crosshair pattern eyes, which was the pink-haired girl's quirk, an ocular quirk which was extremely rare in the world of quirks. It was called Zoom, which allowed the inventor girl to see up to 5 kilometers. You threw that up to 60 feet in the air. That exosuit is awesome, and it didn't explode. You gotta give me your blueprints. She exclaimed happily, especially her grinned infectious. The goggled girl turned around swiftly to face the man who threw the fridge. It was a man no taller than 5 feet 5 inches, but the suit the kid was in made him a couple of inches taller. The suit was a crudely made exosuit that didn't look to operate properly, though the power armor was only in the bones and has no protective gear, such as metal plating or weapons, just the suit's increased strength and speed. Izuku moved towards the fridge with heavy sounds coming from each step. Sorry, Hatsum-chan. Even I don't know if the Mark series power armor will be as good as I think. However, that amount of strength exertion is roughly 50% of the suit's total strength output, Izuku explained. But now he began to mutter underneath his breath, only for a rock to bounce off his chest, to which he looked up to see Mei's annoyed look. Izuku-kun, I thought we had stopped that habit. Anyway, how much strength did you apply to the fridge? Mei said, then asked as she walked back towards him. That fridge, like most other basic consumer fridges, my suit must utilize over 200 pounds of strength to carry and throw the fridge, which is 50% of the strength capacity of the suit, so I can carry up to 400 pounds of weight. Izuku explained the first half of the suit's capabilities, then walked over to a dryer that looked like it would break down just by looking at it funny. The greenette gripped the dryer on both sides, then lifted it overhead. This dryer is 124 pounds, which requires my suit to exert a little over 25% of its gifted strength. But remember, Hatsum-chan, this exosuit is only just the bones and muscles, and it's only just part of the Mark series prototype with immense room for improvement, Izuku said before putting the broken-down machinery back on the sand. Yeah, and unlike me, you managed to keep it from exploding, the ocular girl agreed, and compared with a slight giggle. The quirkless kid just gave a smile and turned around, exposing a semi-large battery in the suit's spine. Yes, the exosuit is powered by military-grade ion battery dash, he said while muttering this part. How such a thing is even here is beyond me, dash. Izuku speaks up again. But as the suit grows, this battery too will become obsolete, and I may need to find a stronger power source, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Izuku finished the turning back around. Yeah, the more technology you add to your suit, which increases the energy demand to keep them active. She agreed, then looked around the garbage heap until she saw something extremely out of place. It was a horn peeking out from behind another wrecked dryer, and a red iris accompanying it, as if the eye was observing the two teens. Mei stared back curiously, though spoke up. Izuku-kun? I think we have an observer. Izuku turned towards Mei curiously, but followed the woman's gaze towards the red iris, which seemed to eat and hidden behind the dryer. What in blue blazing hell is that? The greenette asked, stepping slightly towards the dryer. I think it was a little girl. The inventor answered, but was more curious on why a girl was watching them behind a broken set of machines. I'll go see, but get ready to capture, because someone that young shouldn't be alone without parental supervision. Izuku, informed, stepping closer to the dryer, however developed an annoyed expression when the steampunk girl commented, says the 15-year-old living alone with two others. Eat dick. The greenette walked closer towards the broken dryer, while May stepped closer to the set of stairs located on the right, or in the child's view left. Come on, sweetie, come out and we can talk, Izu said, trying to get the child to come out so he could have a far better look at her. P promise? A sound is heard which gave off a feeling of fear and despair. Izuku almost looked downright terrifying as he knew that tone very well, which was the exact time he himself adopted when he hit a new low 4 years ago until having met Shirori Shigaraki for the first time. However, this facial look would terrify the girl more, so the boy adopted a friendly look. Yes, kiddo, just come out. No one will hurt you, he said, kneeling down to be less frightening. The girl's eye peeked out again, as if to observe the young man again, as if to look for any dishonesty. Having seen none, the girl slowly stepped out from behind the machine, exposing her form to the young boy. The girl had a horn being grown out of her right temple, though her cheeks seemed to be glowing red from blushing, but a large purplish bruise on her cheek, which made Izuku's eyes hardened. Her outfit was a very dirty nightgown that was torn in several locates, but saw the girl's arms, which was littered in cut scars and bruising like the young 4-year-old was in a fight with street gangs. Oh my God, May said as she covered her mouth in surprise and disgust that someone was so evil to have done such damage on an innocent girl. Chapter 3. Eri. Note, okay, my dudes, here's another chapter of the story and the first appearance of the old Yakuza gang. Alright, it seems like you'll really like this story, and so do I and Unlimited since we were trying to bring a lot to the table. But in any case, if y'all have any ideas you want added, then don't hesitate to comment them down. Now then, unfortunately there won't be another Q&A session because there aren't really questions I can answer outside of ones already asked, so that means more words for me to write. Okay, one last thing, a question really. This idea is from a villain Deca story called Apotheosis written by Lord Wolf, so I don't claim credit for this idea. But I do recommend going to this guy and reading his story. It's by far the best Izuku villain story so far, and from the last time I checked, I think he had over 4,000 positive reviews, probably less, but I haven't checked in a while. Anyway, this idea is, do you want me to use taken quirks to either crystallize stones to be embedded into the Mark series power armor, or implement them as blood to be used within the armor, and give the wearer full access to said quirks? If yes, tell me which one sounds more appealing. If no, tell me why. Because I value your opinions deeply, and it helps me shape the story for you to enjoy much more. Izuku Midoriya was standing at the far end of the municipal beach, obviously thinking, given the very serious look that was on his face. Eri, who was the small child's name, was explaining in high detail about her situation and role as a surgical playground, all because she has a quirk that she couldn't control. The unicorn child was sobbing and wished she didn't have such power that can hurt others. Mei, who was listening intently, hugged the sobbing girl to hopefully end the tear fest, then turned to Izuku. What should we do? We obviously can't go to the police since this Yakuza would have people on the inside. She asked the exo-suited man, who was silent throughout the exchange. Izuku was thinking of what to do with the child, especially since he couldn't provide the care a young 4-year-old needed daily. However, that thinking sooner landed on the girl's quirk, rewind, the ability to push time through something to make them rewind. She can cause people to lose their age to non-existence, lose their quirks, and even cause wounds to appear to not have existed at all. A hero would have so much potential when wielding such a powerful quirk, and yet some asshole sadistically hurt a young child just to create weapons to turn the world back into an age where quirks haven't appeared. She's right. We can't take her to the police since that adds a high risk of this overhaul villain appearing to claim Eri. So this villain would have proper papers in place legally. But the real issue is we can't take care of a child. Foster care is obviously off the table. Wait. I have an idea. This villain is obviously using Eri to create quirk erasing bullets. But what if I convince Shirori to replace Eri's quirk with another one? That way we keep an exceptionally powerful quirk out of monsters' hands, and we can help a little girl Izuku starts thinking about what to do. Then a light bulb lit up inside the boy's head. Izuku looks around with a bright look to find Mei raising an eyebrow at such a look while Eri, who watched him, looked curious. I have an idea. Eri-chan, you said your quirk can't be controlled, right? The greenette asked, which made the unicorn child nodded slowly, though unsure where this conversation was heading. Izuku continued as he stepped forward with a grin. I have a friend. Her name is Shiori-chan. She has a quirk that allows her to take quirks that people don't like. He stopped momentarily while muttering, or don't deserve their gifts. Izuku raises his voice to be heard, and she can give them quirks that they do like. Having heard the possibility to get rid of a dangerous quirk that will lead to harm to others made the unicorn child's eyes glow like stars. Is that possible? She asked as her hopes were rising beyond the clouds. Izuku nodded with full honesty. My friend's quirk is called All for One, which she uses to carry other quirks people don't want. She is 12 in total and has 20 in cold storage. She's a genius when it comes to quirks and quirk-related science. Izuku kneeled down towards Eri and placed his metallic right hand into her left shoulder, who kept staring into the green-net eyes. What kind of quirk do you want? He asked the money question, prompting the child to look down and adopt an adorable, serious face, trying to think what kind of quirk she'd want to replace her hated quirk. Does she have a Q quirk that can help people? She asked, looking back up. She, however, pouted when Izuku just chuckled. Hun, all quirks can help people. You just need to think about the positive aspects of your quirk. Sure, you can harm others, but it can also be used to help. Never think of the bad things about quirks. That's the same thinking people use to define evil quirks or villain quirks, but people aren't defined by quirks due to their dangerous abilities. It's the actions of a user that defines them. Eri's eyes widened immensely as if her very closed world was smashed open. That her quirk wasn't a villain power that her supposed adoptive father and constantly claimed it to be, and mocked the young girl that she will be a fantastic villain. This man, however, said that she could be a hero despite her forced actions. She smiled brightly at the encouragement. Okay, I'll take anything she can offer, she said, though implying that she can't decide what quirk would be better than hers. Izuku nodded as he got up from his kneeling position, then looked toward Mei, who stared back. Did you bring your lunchbox today? He asked as when he grabbed the small child's shoulder. He felt malnutrition through the fabric, so the first thing the green net will do before taking her to Shirori is to feed the girl. She must have been hungry. Of course I do. You think I don't get hungry? She exclaimed as she pulled out a crude metal lunchbox as to show she had brought it with her. Good. Feed Eri, then we will head back to the apartment. Izuku informed, which Mei opened her metal lunch holder to grab a bright red apple, then extended the apple to the horned child. Eri hesitated as she was never given anything outside of supplements, but nothing with actual flavor and the need to chew. The apple didn't get pulled back as the younger girl tried to reach for it. The child grabbed the apple, then swiftly pulled back much like a cautious prey animal, then started nibbling on it, even taking a few steps back to prevent the delicious apple from being taken away. Izuku watched with a frown that a child would grow up in such hostile conditions that she worried about having her own food taken away from her. It made Izuku angry. Angry enough to inform a known teddy bear to become an enraged Papa Bear. The greenette stuffed his thoughts of an angry Kotomo beating down numerous red paste bodies on the floor. Izuku immediately looked around as his gut growled, informing Izuku that something was amiss. The greenette believed in instincts, and when his instincts say that something was wrong, something was wrong. Unlike quirks where most would get a speed ticket to good abilities or traits, Izuku and Kotomaru had spent years developing certain skills, which for Koto was strength and durability, while Izuku had favored his obviously intelligent mind and sharp instincts. Izuku grabbed something from inside his armor to produce a visor-like glasses to which he placed over his eyes. These glasses simulated a heads-up display, usually seen in games, and was incredibly useful for a bare-bones exoskeleton, but it will instantly become obsolete when Izuku builds a helmet utilizing the same technology. With loud clunking from the suit onto the concrete of the stone stairs, then walked upwards while looking around until the boy saw a mysterious man watching from a distance in an alleyway, almost like he was observing the exo-suited aspiring hero. The man had a mask and hat that was similar to a plague doctor style along with a black overcloak, was only standing there observing the green net silently, but it was good for Izuku. Well, not good for a creepy masked punk was watching him, but good that he was a perfect subject to test the analysis visor, since Izuku had forgotten to ask May to be a test subject. Analysis. Name, Shin Nemoto. Age, 28. Known occupation. Taken from police records, con artist. Known affiliation. Information taken from the Sernaitai Agency, Shai Hasaikai. Quirk. Confession. Forces affected targets to answer truthfully of any question. Ways to combat quirk. Estimated do not respond to the target's questions while quirk is active. Skills. Information taken from the Sernaitai Agency. Keen intellect. Military marksmanship. Support items. 9mm handgun located underneath cloak. Estimated stats. Power, E1/6. Speed, D, 2/6. Technique, A, 5/6. Intelligence, B, 4/6. Tenacity, B, 4/6. Ways to defeat. Do not answer questions. Low combat capability, so low strength, speed, and durability. For a desirable victory, a complete physical overpowerment of the victim. Disarm victims while overpowering them. Beware of the victim's intelligence due to their history as a con artist. In analysis, Izuku hooked the analysis visor to the Commission of Quirk Safety's database of all citizens of Japanese, and it is constantly being filled with newer information provided by all hero agencies across the country, and Izuku coded it to be exactly similar to the analysis notes that the mechanical genius puts in notebooks. But now with this technology, Izuku has now moved beyond written paper to digital coding. Shai Hasaikai. Isn't it an old Yakuza group that disbanded 15 years ago? So this guy must have aligned himself to a dying breed of villains, but his quirk is useful in their hands. And in ours, if he attacks and tries to get airy, then I have a legal excuse to beat him to the floor, then have Shirori rip out his quirk. Scumbags like villains don't have a right for such giftger. Calm down, Izuku. Now's not the time. First is getting airy away from here. But how? This jackass is watching my every step. But from his distance means if he gets closer, he will suspect that I know something is amiss, so he can't get any further, and I can use the junkyard to... Okay, that's as best of an idea I can do, given the circumstances, Izuku thinks to himself, as he quickly formulated a plan. The cloaked figure watched as the exo-suited brat stepped onto the concrete sidewalk above the Takoba Municipal Beach and stared at the masked man for what seemed like 10 minutes. Shinimoto felt extremely weirded out by the kid and would just walk away if not for the orders he had received from the only man whose word the play cosplayer valued. Bring Eri back, rough her up if you need to blow off steam, but don't kill her. She's of no use to us if her quirk goes with her soul. Kill anyone that stands in your way. That was the masked man's orders from the Yakuza boss. Jesus, kid, stop staring. You're weirding me the fuck out. Shin shouted in his mind as he felt goosebumps appear on his skin, while underneath the cloak, he really wanted the kid to stop staring. Like a divine being that has answered the Yakuza member's prayer, the exo-suited kid turned around and went back down to the beach to speak with a pink-haired girl with steampunk goggles before the two went behind numerous kitchen appliances to obstruct the villain's sight. Smart. I think the kid realized I was watching him and Eri from a distance. So what will they plan? Should be entertaining at the least before I break Eri and drag her to the boss. Shin would have gotten closer, but this time he'd be directly saying, hey, I'm a creepy stalker. Call the cops please, but the masked villain is no stalker because he has standards than the average villain. Ring. 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 Shin's phone started ringing from inside his pants pocket underneath the man's cloak, so pulling out to answer and brought it to his ear. Did you find her? The voice tone was unmistakable to the Plague cosplayer, the voice of the Yakuza boss, Overhaul. Yep, she's hiding in Takoba Municipal Beach, but there's a problem. Shin informed his leader, though unsure if Overhaul would think of two kids hanging around Eri to be a problem. Problem? The Yakuza leader said with a tone of boredom, but with a hint of intrigue, which had a hidden meaning of is a hero involved. Not sure if you saw it like that, but Eri made contact with two civilians, and one of them made my spine chill. I never had that chill before, even when I was in the open against a hero, but this kid, this boy, I felt something completely different from him. Shin informed the boss his true feelings about the greenette's creepy staring, then silent return to the beach. Overhaul remained silent for the time, though the man was thinking before chuckling. You normally don't think civilians as problems, but that doesn't hamper your goal now. If they are in your way, attack. They have no legal standing to fight back, otherwise we can put in work to make them out as villains. Overhaul said, which made the Plague cosplayer nod in agreement, but felt his stomach turn from the kid's creepy staring. Right, boss, but if these two does end up being more problematic than we first assume, what then? He asked, curious if there was a plan B in place, otherwise the masked villain wouldn't like to have a hero butting into his obvious legal business. Then we put the down, Shin. You know this. The boss exclaimed the crime of murder as if it was a normal Tuesday, which it typically was. Most of everyone in Shaiha Saikai had committed murder. Most of it was aimed at heroes with occasional civilian and villain homicide. Overhaul, sir? While I agree that's what we typically do when faced with a problem, but I have to be adamant about this brat. The way he stared at me made me shiver, and he was smart enough to find behind the junk pile that I'm seeing. I think he knows I'll be approaching him soon to get the kid, so he's preparing for a confrontation by using the junkyard to his advantage. Shin explained his thoughts on the whole matter, to which even got Overhaul curious on this mysterious kid. Is that so? Kid probably has an observation quirk or something, but it doesn't matter in the long run, Shin. Get Eri and bring her back. Then, without the masked villain responding, the phone did repeated beeping, showing the call ended. Okay, that was absolutely not helpful to the mission. Shin thinks to himself, then looks up to see a pink-haired girl with steampunk goggles in a dark tank top and worker pants. Is she leaving? The masked figure asked, unsure of what was happening, especially with the large green duffel bag that she had on her back. Shin was prepared to follow her and the creepy boy until someone, most likely creepy boy, loudly shouted from inside the junk pile, "Hey, don't forget to take that bag to Alpha Point 38 Beta. I'll stay behind and wait for this little girl's parents. If not, I'll take her to the police." Maybe Overhaul was right. This boy just unknowingly created an advantage for me. Stupid kid, Shin thinks to himself as he watched the girl walk away until she was out of sight after 10 minutes. Now it was time for the cloaked figure. Shin walks towards the beach, then onto the sand to start looking around. Shin looks around while seeing numerous broken down appliances, but those aren't what he was looking for. After several minutes of looking around, the masked man catches a glimpse of flowing white hair from behind a large fridge. About time, Shin said as he started making his way further down the beach towards the white hair area. You disgusting, worthless piece of shit. When I get over there, I'm going to make sure I drag you back with your fucking legs broken. Shin shouted with unbridled rage and even started running on the sand, not want to waste any more time. Shin reaches where Eri was located, which wasn't the child in question. What? The villain shouted as he saw the flowing white hair taped to what was a crude functioning fan that simulated flowing hair with another crudely made power generator. How the hell did this happen? He thinks only to feel a shiver down his spine as loud, clunking noises was heard behind the villain. I looked into your profile. You're supposed to be a smart con man, so you should have realized after I stared at you that your little mission to harm Eri was completely compromised and should have called backup when you had the chance, a male voice exclaimed, almost condescending. Shin realized that this kid effortlessly set a trap while he was under watch. I was right, and Overhaul still believed in the mission. This kid is more frightening than any hero I faced before. Should I appeal to his good morals? Or should I make a faux whining? No, the latter wouldn't work, because the kid heard about my threats to Eri. Let's just hope my acting hasn't deteriorated, Shin thinks, as he was prepped to appeal to the kid, only to gasp, "UGHHH," as a large metal fist slammed into the cloaked figure's midsection that the suited fighter assumed was the stomach. Shin Nemoto felt that a truck filled with bricks just slammed into him with enough force to send the con man flying and crashing through a small section of junkyard, until stopping after hitting a deteriorating oil drum high. What the fuck just hit me? It's like a flaming semi just fell on me. He slowly got up while curling slightly due to the growing stomach-induced pain. That suit is well beyond what Power Loader can achieve. As the Yakuza villain tried to get up while powering through the pain from his stomach, only to feel dread as clunking noises were heard slamming closer. You could try to prosecute me for assault, but who will believe you? A villain attacking a civilian unprovoked and intended harm of a young 4-year-old girl. Izuku mocked the masked villain of, "You can't do shit to me legally," and this would work favorably to Izuku's desire to rip the man's quirk away while simultaneously taking away a powerful quirk and individual from heiress villain parents. 3 birds, 1 boulder. Aka quirk removal, important villain taken down, and personal revenge for Eri. Shin slipped his right hand underneath the cloak, looking for the 9mm pistol to use on the kid. Hopefully a few bullets in the gut will force the kid to be more cooperative to discuss Eri. "What does that monstrous brat mean to you?" he asked, even exuding the power of his quirk to try to get some answers on why the greenette cares so much. "She reminds me of myself, a scared little child who doesn't have the confidence to fight back. Unlike me, she will have people to stand by when I undoubtedly pulverize you and your group," Izuku said, even when the asterisk quirk use detected asterisk was shown in the analysis visor. The young aspiring hero saw no harm in answering the question, however stopped when Shin swiftly got up groaning, pulling out a blank-tinted handgun from underneath his cloak. "Tell me where she is, or get shot," he shouted, hoping the kid would answer, so the confession quirk would work, and after killing the kid, he'd finally get Eri, and unlike his previous statement of breaking the small child's legs, he'd probably beat her close to death. "Oh, please do. Give me a reason to actually hurt you," Izuku taunted, as what he did moments ago was merely a love tap. Shin gritted his teeth, then pulled the trigger. The gun fires with a loud bang that anyone around would have instantly ran over to see what happened. The bullet hits the metal exosuit to bounce off in a spark of heat. What? Shin said as he stared at the suited boy in disbelief on how a suit would have deflected a bullet without even a dent. The suit was crafted with tungsten. Seriously? Did you seriously think a bullet would damage the strongest metal on Earth? Izuku shouted with complete disbelief that a con man just shot the suit. Shin looked down at the gun as he slowly got to his full height despite using his left arm to hold onto his midsection since the deep pain in his stomach has yet to dissipate. He then raised his weapon and fired more shots at Izuku, with each bullet hitting the suit in a large flash of sparks. Fear and dread slowly crept into Shin's heart as he tried stepping backwards, shooting at the armored kid more. But the suit he was wearing was impervious against bullets, or maybe it was a suit precisely built to counter physical base quirks, so it stands to reason that the suit wouldn't be scratched by conventional weaponry. Izuku huffed to himself, almost felt sad for what he's about to do, but remembering Eri and imagining her suffering only made the greenette's rage return twice. Power dashing forward, then grabbed the man's gun in his right metallic hand, then slowly crushed the gun like paper mache, along with the Yakuza member's hand. Shin screamed in pain as he felt the bones in his hands crunch and break along with being dug into from the broken gun parts. The masked villain got a thought, and shit, this fucking hurts. If this kid was a villain, I would have just said to give someone else this job. He's fucking scary. Pain continued, and a white searing like burn was felt through his hand, which caused Shin to scream even louder. "Keep screaming, you fucking scumbag. I always choose days to which Takoba Municipal will have less than 5% of people around, so I don't get bothered when I take stuff from the junkyard, but now I want retribution for what you did to an innocent little girl, but I won't kill you, no." Izuku then raised his left hand and bitch slaps the villain, sending him to the ground, blood splattering. The hat and Plague Doctor mask fell off, exposing Shin's real face. Shin was a relatively plain guy. Quite handsome, really, and those black eyes were very pretty, and while Izuku was a bisexual man, he leaned more towards women, but wouldn't say no to a date with a handsome man, though he desired his creations more than physical pleasure. But in any case, Izuku raised his right leg and slammed his metal sole into the villain's face, watching blood fly and splatter all over the ground, then raising the foot to slam it again, causing blood to flow from the man's right eye and shattering his orbit, the bone surrounding the eye, and causing a few teeth to fly out as well. In short, Izuku heavily damaged the man's face under the concept of retribution, or easily seen as revenge for a child who couldn't defend herself. Izuku himself believed it was an unheroic act, but being a hero meant doing things one isn't proud of, with his desire to be a realistic hero. Izuku doesn't plan to follow All Might's philosophy after seeing the villain attack yesterday, and having almost perished that same day, meaning that reality was far harsher than fiction, and to be an effective hero, you need to make very tough calls to minimize civilian casualties and destruction of property, even if it means killing the villain. Just know, I'll be taking you to someone who can truly make you suffer. Her father used to be an extremely powerful villain that even got All Might to sweat, so I know she picked up a few of his tricks, Izuku said through gritted teeth before knocking the man out completely with another step. Oh yeah, I forgot I gave Eri my phone to play on as a way to pay her off to sneak away in that duffel bag and to cut off a lot of her hair for the decoy. Am I forgetting something today? Seemed like it was important, but nah. If it was then, I wouldn't have forgotten. Izuku remained silent as he looked down on the villain, which realization dawned on the young boy's face. Well shit, the meeting with Yagi-san. Ah well, it's probably over, and the heroes had left, and if Shirori is correct, they had left beyond some recommendation forms to be filled out. Well, I'm still thinking if I should go through the entrance exam like everyone else, Izuku thinks to himself as he grabs the unconscious man from the lower midsection. Meanwhile, 20 minutes ago was by far the craziest that the steampunk inventor had experienced. Firstly, the fact that Izuku explained that someone was watching them and having shot down the pink girl's retort that it was a passerby, Izuku swiftly reminded her that they always gone to the beach with only 5% of people around, which meant if a fight did occur, then no one would be around to get drawn in or worse, get a hero involved. Now Izuku placed together a hastily stitched plan to draw the creeper to the beach, then to arrest him or something. The greenette was vague about what he wanted to do to the masked villain, and when he got vague, Mei obviously learned to just not pry into his personal business. Now to capture this villain, Izuku asked her to build a working generator for a near-ruined fan, while watching him bribe Eri with a phone to stuff her into a duffel bag, while cutting off a large portion of her hair to be used as a decoy. Now the pink-haired girl was walking towards the apartment complex that Izuku stayed in with two others, Anime. A young voice called out from inside the duffel bag that she was holding on her. The bag unzipped itself to expose Eri. Her nightgown was dirty and torn through. The only thing different from her was that her overly long bleach white hair is now shorter, much shorter, around Mai's hair length really, which was cute, because Eri looked cuter with shorter hair. Yes, sweetie, she called out as the inventor really took the name Annie with stride, because if she was an aunt figuratively, then Izuku is no doubt the father. The greenette certainly had this loving father energy. Is Izuku going to be okay? Eri said, even looking from the phone, which clearly was showing the kids section of YouTube. Mei almost said cute at the girl who tried to cover up her mistake of calling Izuku father. And Dad would have blushed if he was with them. The ocular court girl smiled as she looked forward and saw the apartment, almost felt relieved for safety being so close. Yes, sweetie, Papa will be fine, because if he wasn't, he would have found a way to lose the creepy guy, but knowing him, he'd probably figured out something to subdue him, Mei said with full confidence in Izuku's prowess to overcome any obstacles. Eri smiled as she fully believed in the man who went out his way to help her, so having read the subtext of allowing her to call Izuku father, so she returns inside the duffel bag to play Scrabble that was on the smartphone. Mei kept her walk towards the apartment complex, but her smile turned into a frown because aging met this Shirori a few times already. The inventor didn't know the multi-quirk girl well enough to think she would give up one of her quirks for a stranger. Hopefully, mentioning Izuku would get her to be more compliant to giving Eri a better quirk. May thinks to herself, but such negative thoughts caused her stomach to twist. Up to 5 minutes has passed for reaching the complex and going up the 5 flights of stairs to reach 507, which was Izuku's apartment. May knocked on the door ready to explain herself, and Eri, so when the door opened revealing Shirori and her gentle green eyes and strawberry pink hair that looked neatly combed and in a ponytail. "Hello, May. Is Izuku with you?" He didn't answer his phone, Shirori asked since the heroes had left the apartment about 15 minutes, as well as 3 recommendation forms to be turned in, if they desired, or if they chose to enter through the entrance exam. They also had left behind 6 phone numbers of the heroes under the pretense of assistance in schoolwork, training, or just hanging out in general. So that was Izuku's ringtone. Huh. Never peg him to like Linkin Park. May thinks before smiling. Sorry, we were stalked by a villain earlier, so Izuku stayed behind so he could deal with him. Oh, BTW. His suit was awesome. You think he minds if I copied his blueprints? Shirori seemed to giggle slightly at the fellow pink hair to ask about the engineer's blueprints, though frowned at the notion of a villain. Is he okay? Should be. That suit of his is made from tungsten, and last I used tungsten, it managed to stay whole even after exploding, May exclaimed with full honesty like she usually does whenever her babies or Izuku's babies are involved. Yeah, Izuku has a habit of keeping his toys in one piece, even in battle, so if that suit of his managed to break, then I'd eat my non-existent fedora, Shirori exclaimed with a slight giggle, but then her eyes went down toward the duffel bag that May was carrying on her right hand, to find a small girl with red eyes staring at the multi-quirk woman. "Well, hello there, sweetie. What's your name?" she asked the young child, who seemed to sink a bit deeper inside the duffel bag. "Ieri." The unicorn child stuttered out as she felt some dangerous darkness from inside the multi-quirk woman. Shirori smiled at Eri and nodded towards the horn child until a frown was seen on the older pink girl's face, primarily because Shirori could see the pain and fear behind Eri's crimson irises. "Eri-chan, what happened?" she asked, and depending on the answer, Shirori may just give a call to her father to deal with whatever made the unicorn child like this. Eri is being chased by her adopted father, who's a villain and the leader of a Yakuza cell. Izuku stayed behind to deal with the one sent by her father, so I assume he will be by later on. May answered for Eri, who seemed to fully retreat into the duffel bag and was shown to be highly frightened due to the conversation. "I see. And if Izuku wins, then I would predict he would bring this villain here to interrogate the rest of the Yakuza cell. And if not, I see. Thank you for bringing this up, May, but again, why bring Eri-chan here? Shouldn't you take her to the police?" Shirori asked, as she couldn't figure out the reason for bringing a child to the apartment when the police was a safer alternative then, with 2 quirkless, one natural strength and the other intelligent. And the police were legal when dealing with villains and other threats to a child's safety. Izuku didn't really explain much in detail, but he said that Eri's quirk was extremely dangerous and powerful. He said you could take it from her and give her a quirk she wanted. The steampunk inventor explained the full situation about Eri, though shifted in her feet, as May felt that Shirori wouldn't comply with Izuku's desire to help the young child. Shirori narrowed her eyes at the other pinkette, who seemed to shrink from the calculated gaze, which soon turned into a gentle one. "Is that all? Of course she can. But I need to know Era's current quirk, so I'll be taking her to mine and Izuku's shared lab. Thanks for bringing her to me." May nodded and handed the bag to the older pinkette. Shirori nodded and closed the door, leaving May to return home. The eldest of the house looked down to see a shining eye look from the horn girl. "My goodness, ain't she adorable? I swear I'd spoil her rotten if she was closer to us, but unfortunately after giving her a new quirk. We may need to put her into foster care." Shirori frowned as she walked into the living room to find Kodo on the couch. He was laying on his side while holding a game controller, and the TV screen was that of Legend of Zelda. "Kodo, do we have any apples?" she asked as she gently placed the back in front of the table in the kitchen and brought the child out to place her onto the chair. Eri was still holding onto the familiar green-colored iPhone, though she clenched it and kept it close to her chest, though the woman's gentle, motherly smile made the youngest to smile back, and her fear slowly receding. Should be in the fridge, sure, Chan. That's where we usually put cold, fresh apples. Kodo shouted from the living while he adopted a serious look as he was fighting some mini-boss. Eri flinched at the sudden loud noise and almost got off the chair to retreat into the duffel bag, as it was the thing Izuku told her to hide in if she was scared. The multi-quirk girl saw the girl's rising fear from the loud noise, so she placed her gentle right hand on Eri's dirty shoulder and smiled. Breathe, gently, little one. So long as I am here, no one will ever touch you again. Ok, she said and smiled, to which Eri seemed to visibly calm down. Okay, sweetie, before I ask you what your quirk is and what you want to replace it, what do you think of Izuku? Shirori asked as she felt that the young child was about to go into the duffel bag. Shigaraki almost chuckled as she remembered a time when Izuku was so stressed from the bullying several years back that Izu was seen hiding in a duffel bag in their shared room. So Izuku must have passed on his knowledge of hiding in bags to the young child. Eri seemed to look at the bag, then back at Shirori, who looked curious. Izuku said that I would feel safe if I stayed in the bag, if I get scared ever. Shirori caught the attempt to not call Izuku father, which means that Aiza must have really gone out of his way to help a small child to stay out of the hands of villains, like a true hero. No need to correct yourself, my dear. Izuku would be happy to be called father, and unlike the woman who brought you here, I know him far more than most. Now then, what is your quirk? Shirori asks, as she finally gets to learn why a child would hate their own gift. Eri looked sad, however, she shook her head to expose a determined look. Why, yes, my Q quirk is Rewind. It allows me to turn time back on people. My father said that it has no limit to reverting their time back, even up to when never existed, Eri said, even stuttering through, but knew she had to power through it. Shirori started to think about Rewind and its potential use. Okay, Rewind is indeed extremely powerful, but no quirk can have that much power without some sort of drawback. All for one, my quirk is just a thief quirk, and I need other quirks to build a power base, but without the other quirks to my DNA, then I'd be no stronger than other quirkless. One for all, my nemesis quirk is limited to its current user. Nana Shimura, the previous holder, could barely lose to my father all those years ago until All Might came around and defeated and disfigured him. So One for All can only increase in power when passed on to a new successor. So Rewind pushes time back through someone to force them to undergo devolution, even turning them to infancy, force their quirk to regress into nothing, or even make them be unborn. It's incredibly versatile, but since time can only affect living beings a certain way, I think it's safe to say that Rewind can affect non-living creatures with plants, that I suspect being the only exception. I suspect that Horn is connected to Rewind, so the quirk could be an accumulation quirk to which its power grows in the horn, and if reach a certain point that it will be unleashed and unrestrained. Yeah, that is it. Such a quirk is extremely powerful, but comes with equal drawbacks for its use. Now I understand why Eri was so afraid, because any villain could cause a lot of heroes to become quirkless or worse, disappear entirely. Shirori nodded to herself, but Eri assumed that the girl was thinking about something. Very well, my dear. What kind of quirk would you like? She asked as she mentally prepped to discard one of her own personally selected quirks, just to make a little girl's life just a bit more happy. Do you have a Q quirk that can help people? Eri asked as she kept in mind of what Izuku had told her earlier at the beach, but she wanted to ask the quirk giver about the nature of the biological gifts and tools. The strawberry girl seemed to smile at the child, almost seeing a biological copy to the greenette. Sweetie, should I assume your Tusan had already told you that quirks don't define themselves, but instead is defined by the actions of the wielder? Eri nodded at the question. Very well. Anything specific? Or should I give a quirk that has more helpful qualities than harmful? The bleach-haired child had stars in her eyes at the prospect of a more good quirk to help others was sounding great to her. She nodded like a slinky in motion, so the strawberry girl closed her eyes, shifting through 12 of her quirks to figure out which one would help. However, Shirori just gave a silent sigh, as all her quirks were extremely powerful and was specifically taken under a specific situation. So none of her chosen quirks would be suitable for an aspiring rescue hero. Until an idea popped into Shiori's head, so getting up from her kneeling position, Eri, stay here. I'm gonna get the perfect quirk. She then walked away, not even waiting for the white-haired girl's response. The multi-quirk girl walked into the lab/engineering workshop, which is a half and half of both. That the engineering workshop accommodated Izuku's desire for creating machines, while Shirori had a laboratory very similar to a fully equipped geneticist lab. Opening a fridge that was filled with 20 vials of crimson liquid that would be instantly recognized as blood, swiftly sorting through the fridge until pulling out a vial that says, Replica. Then she smiled, Replica quirk. Capable of replicating any non-organic material, if she so desired, she could potentially help keep buildings from collapsing or double the amount of bandages at some clinic or something. But to someone like Eri, it's by far the most potentially helpful quirk for a rescue hero. Shirori mentally speaks about the quirk while prepping, which was grabbing a syringe to slowly absorb the blood into the tube. Shirori was glad to not be wearing any long-sleeve shirts because it was always a pain to roll them up and back down to avoid a needle puncture wound, as that would cause more trouble while trying, and Fruitless explained that the multi-quirk girl was injecting blood into, as well as out of her system for an unknown reason, but the whole blood injection that would already be considered suspicious and warrants a trip to the courts. Pulled in the vial's full contents into the syringe, then moved the needle towards her left arm to where a vein was visible, puncturing herself and fully injects the contents, but slowly, as the girl has learned very early on that when injected too quickly will result in nausea, temporary unconsciousness, and worst of all, complete loss of the injected quirk, since the quirk was entered to quickly and swiftly fought off by Shiori's white blood cells, since it was recognized as a foreign mutation. Material. After 10 minutes of agony of a puncture from a needle, while making sure the quirk she's injecting remains complete while AFO accepts it, then finally the syringe is empty of its contents and was removed swiftly and trickles of blood slowly comes out, but was denied when the AFO offspring placed a band-aid over the wound. While I see this process necessary to maintain a diverse and powerful set of quirks, it's really time and pain-consuming of injecting and rejecting quirks from my body, she thinks. To herself, as she made an internal investigation of her quirks within her body to find out Replica was now among them. Good, now I just need to give it to Eri and take her so I can reject it, she thinks once more. Rejecting quirk from the girl's body was far easier and quicker. She then, getting up to walk out of workshop to return to Eri, who seemed to have followed the Pinket's orders of remaining on the chair, then looked at Shirori. Okay, sweetie. It took me some time, but I have the perfect quirk for you. But first, she started to say, but stopping in the middle of her sentence to grab the young child's head with her left hand that exuded a purplish haze indicating all for one was active. Rewind was found within Eri's genetics, and it was an accumulation-style emitter quirk, which made sense for its power then for a bit. Shirori learned everything about the time-based quirk, then taking it off of Eri's DNA and placing it onto hers. To indicate that Rewind was gone has exposed that the horn on Eri's right temple reseated back into her skull, almost as if it didn't exist. However, the horn was formed from Shiori's right temple instead and was hardly larger than candy cord. Okay, so my theory is correct. The horn determines just how strong the Rewind can be at a given moment. And, at the split second, Era's heart beats when she felt something strange enter her body. A quirk. It was a quirk that the child had felt. Eri watched as Shirori pulled her hand back with a smile. There you go, hon. Your new quirk is called Replica. You can replicate any non-organic matter you can touch. But remember, sweetie, the downside is that you need to be touching said material, and it takes stamina to make it. Eri seemed to look at her new aunt with an open mouth of shock, as if she was ready to be pranked but felt her horn disappear and see said horn onto the Pinkett head. And for a split moment in a surge for feelings, Eri charged forward and hugged Shirori Shigaraki's midsection while crying. Shirori was shocked indeed, as she wasn't expecting to be hugged out of sheer happiness, but it would be expected for having given a child the chance of normal childhood. So the Pinkette slowly hugged back while simultaneously bringing out her own phone to nab a photo for Izuku. I'm sure Izuku would love to see an adorable pic of his new Museum Chanhi times Kip 1200. Shin Namoto groaned as he slowly lifted his head up, and immediately a rush of pain exploded, causing him to groan more. Jesus, I feel like shit. That kid suit is stronger than power loaders. Wait, where am I? The villain thinks to himself, then looks up and around to find himself strapped and bound to a metal chair. Shin felt it was tungsten. And in the corner of a metallic-looking workshop with half of it looking like a mechanic garage with a dog-looking robot half built on a table. The other half of the room looked to be similar to a lab with numerous beakers of unknown liquids of the rainbow and several vials of crimson. Shin believed it was blood, and a glass door fridge filled with vials of blood to which the non-masked villain could see the labels. Hydrokinesis, Gaiakinesis, Vacuum blade, Translator. But what made Shin nearly choke on his own spit was that the vial in the front was something he had hoped to never report to Overhaul. Rewind. The very same name that Aer's quirk was named, which meant that Shin must have been taken to someone who was a descendant of the villain legend, all for one a villain with the ability to take quirks from others, use them, and gave them away, but never had Shin heard of rumors of AFO remove quirks through blood. That meant that every one of those vials held quirks. Oh, sweet lord, is that what the kid meant? He took me to AFO's descendant, who somehow carried that cursed quirk. The Yakuza villain starts struggling against his binds in hopes of freeing himself as dread fills his heart again, but not one of fearing for his own life, but fear of living quirkless due to the descendant taking away his quirk. I wouldn't try to struggle. You certainly managed to become an enemy to my closest friend. A brother really. A feminine voice spoke up, catching Shin's attention, to which he turned towards the door. The woman was wearing dog-printed PJ bottoms, and her shirt was a black tank top. The woman's hair was strawberry pink and tied into a ponytail. Her eyes, however, had black bags, which meant she was either forced to stay awake or hasn't slept in a while. You must be all for one's descendant, Shin called out, trying to get a confirmation of his already confirmed theory. Shirori Shigaraki seemed to smile, though not out of kindness, but malice. Yeah, I am. But like I said, you really pissed off someone who's almost like a brother to me. He even asked me to rip away your quirk, then kill you, she said as her smile turned into a toothy grin, a villain's grin as it's called by heroes. Shin swallowed a lump in his throat as he knew where this was going, and now Overhaul had lost not only an extremely powerful quirk, but his top informant. Listen, young lady, what do you want? Name it, and I'm sure my boss can give it to you if you return me and the rewind quirk. He tried to barter his way out of certain death, but the young girl's grin seemed to grow even more, showing more of her clean white teeth. Oh, my friend, you don't get to bargain for putting my brother through such an ordeal and to cause such pain and misery to a very young child. I'm going to have fun ripping you to shreds. Please scream as much as you like, because no one will save you. Shirori exclaimed, so dark that the Yakuza villain gulped as he saw an imaginary image of a white-haired man with numerous scars all over his face appearing just above Shirori, seeing the uncanny resemblance between the two personalities. Forgive me, father, for I have sinned. That was Shin's last thoughts before a full night of torture began. 3 hours had passed, as Shirori Shigaraki had shown her paralleled colors that All Might would recognize as a younger All for one. Though, while Shirori would agree, she is sometimes like her father, she aimed to be a hero, but not just any hero, an anti-hero. Heroes that don't bend to the rules of normal limelight heroes. Shirori steps out from the noise-proof workshop, which was required sign Izuku tended to be loud with his creations and caused their rent to be raised twice by a quirkless discriminatory landlord. He would be the next target if not for the fact that Kodo and Izuku said she'd turn out too much like her father by taking her rage out on those who actually deserve it. Shirori yawned as she stretched to check on Eri, who'd taken up the small couch as her bed until they decided the child was staying longer. Upon reaching the doorway to the living room, the young quirk stealer looked at Eri, who looked cleaner and happier, especially since as the only girl in the house at the time was forced to give the former horn girl an actual bath. However, that didn't make Shirori smile, but this did. Izuku was also sleeping in the living room, but on the floor and closer towards Eri, almost like a sleeping, enraged, and protective bear. Izuku returned to the apartment, holding the villain that Shirori just slaughtered like some pig. Cute, Izuku-kun. You make one hell of a dad. And with thought cleared out, Shirori turned to sleep in her bed in the bedroom.